On n'entend pas.
Sorry to interrupt. We cannot hear anything that you say. Excuse me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Denise, on n'entend pas.
Bonjour, quelqu'un m'entend en ce moment?
Oui, on entend bien.
Ah, parfait, DDG.
Et
Donc,
on n'entend pas Denise.
yes, please, sorry, we have some technical issue. We will wait 2 minutes until Denise can take the floor and speak with all of you. So please be patient, 2 minutes to try to fix whatever problem, technical problem we have. Thank you very much.
Ferme, ferme, ferme. Fermez la porte. Did you hear me? Okay, sorry for the inconvenience. Bonjour. Dear participants, I am pleased to welcome you to today's UNESCO Cities Platform meeting on the topic Urban Solutions, Learning from Cities' Responses to COVID-19. Today, we will discuss how cities around the world have been impacted by the current pandemic and how urban development policies and strategies can evolve to build sustainable and resilient cities of tomorrow. To open our discussions, I would like to invite the Deputy Director General of UNESCO, Mr. Xing Shu, to deliver the opening remarks. Mr. Shu, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Denise. Dear distinguished mayors and representatives, panel members, dear colleagues, dear friends, I would like to warmly welcome you all to this discussion organized by the UNESCO Cities Platform, which, due to present circumstances, is taking place online. It is an honor to be delivering these opening remarks as we look to cities for inspiration on urban solutions in response to COVID-19. Cities are home to more than half of the global population. Cities make life better because cities concentrate resources, people, and activities. And it is exactly this concentration that makes them vulnerable to crisis. Indeed, where there is less room for people, there is more room for illness. This creates health risks, of course, as the COVID-19 pandemic is teaching us. Many vulnerable populations live in urban areas, including economically disadvantaged groups who are at higher risk of contracting the virus. For those living in the slums of Mumbai, for example, social distancing is a curious privilege, to quote the Indian journalist Rana Ayub. This concentration also creates risks for the economic, cultural, and social fabric of urban areas. Because of the crisis, millions of workers face losing their jobs and income. This will have a disproportionate impact on cities, which generate more than 80% of global GDP. Cities are also home to museums, concert halls, and theaters, many of which have been forced to close their door to the public, threatening the diversity of cultural expressions. And yet, precisely because cities concentrate people, resources, and activities, they will undoubtedly be one of the driving forces behind our recovery. By leveraging the creative industries, for instance, cities can use culture to support urban regeneration through the promotion of social cohesion, well-being, and intercultural dialogue. By building on their urban heritage, cities can develop tourism that is fairer, more sustainable, and less destructive. By implementing inclusive strategies for migration, actions to fight the stigmatization, affordable housing, and other initiatives, cities can fight the root causes of racism and discrimination, which have increased during the pandemic. Mesdames, Messieurs, pour que les villes puissent jouer un rôle de
Ladies and gentlemen, so that cities can play their role as ideal laboratories and come up with innovative solutions, we have to leverage all our collective intelligence, reinforcing economic, social, and cultural fabric of cities, and building an urban model that is fairer and more resilient. These are very ambitious projects, and they call, therefore, for us to pool our experience and our resources. And this is where the UNESCO Cities Platform can play its role. It consists of 8 networks and programs, and it is a link between cities in the whole world, concentrating on culture, tourism, and creativity, innovation, harmony, and social cohesion, all of which are cross-cutting issues which are key to all our societies. This platform helps us, therefore, to address an essential question, which is how are cities responding to the COVID-19 crisis, and what lessons can we learn from them? In order to address these challenges of the future, we will discuss along with city representatives, UNESCO city representatives, development agencies, academics, and experts. We will address the experiences of cities around the world during this crisis. And also, we, in order to envisage solutions and look at the outlook, we will look at stimulating and inspiring proposals by urban planners, architects, and specialists so that urban development can be placed at the service of each and every one of us. Epidemics and crises have always left their mark on architecture and urban organization, and the crisis we are currently experiencing will be no exception to that rule. But today, we have an opportunity to leverage this crisis to think about what we want for the future. Today, we have an opportunity to design a better city for a better life. And this is why it was very important for me to be with you today. I wish you useful and fruitful debates, and I thank you for being with us here today. And thank you for your input. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your remarks, Mr. Xu. Allow me to provide you with some technical information on the structure of this meeting. Our meeting will be structured around 3 e-debates and a special session, each of which will last 45 minutes. Each of the e-debates and the special session will be composed by an introduction by the moderator, followed by the interventions of 4 to 5 speakers and a Q&A segment. The moderator will then conclude with a wrap-up. Given the high number of speakers and tight schedule, I would like to remind all participants that their intervention should not exceed 4 minutes. I would also like to remind to keep your microphone and camera switched off until your respective e-debate. Without any further delays, I pass on the floor to Miriam Villela, our first moderator, UNESCO Chair on Education for Sustainable Development with the Earth Charter, for the e-debate number 1 on cities' responses to COVID-19. Mirena, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and greetings from Costa Rica. I welcome everybody to this first session, which is going to be a session that will look at how cities have been at the forefront of responding to COVID-19. This session will hopefully look at how cities have been translating national government measures into local actions and addressing communities' urgent needs in many ways. It will also look at what lessons have been learned to be better prepared for the future, given the fact that we'll probably be having to address a number of other challenges similar to this one in the future. The fact is, cities is where most of national government policies have to be implemented. So let me start by inviting Ms. Maria Francesca Merloni, UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador for Creative Cities, to come to take the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Miriam. And good morning, my dear friend all over the world, UNESCO group, Mr. King Ju, Ernesto, Mr. Ernesto Ton, Denise Bax, that I thank you with all my heart. And my dear, something is happening, and we are crossing change, even if we don't want and resist. Happening and is changing deeply our lives, our facing life, our souls, our way of living. And we have to comprehend it and not negate it if we want to move forward, overcome and rebuild a new order and a new possibility to live together. I have and I live this period with the deep silence contemplation of what was happening. And I want to share my really, I think, most important issue that I tried to comprehend in this moment. I want to talk with you. Time. I think time is the matter, because now change our inner time, and cities are change their own. And we are assisting to a disintegration of chronos, and we are into crisis in the Greek meaning of destruction, opportunity, but we are disoriented. We need time to understand it, and we need time really to inhabit this. And we need time to understand what this new order is asking us, what is suggesting, what is trying to say to us. And also facing the slip of time among the cities. Perhaps I live in Italy, and my time is not the same time of Latin America or Orient or China. And this time is oriented by the order. So we are pre, post, or in lockdown, and these great changes in way of living and voting. Before we were all in an order. Now we are in different orders. Also among cities in the same country, we different orders of time. And then, my dear friends, there is that have not lived, because perhaps we have the feeling that time has been interrupted in our lives, and we are in credit of time versus our life. So time belonged to us, and we lost it, or perhaps we have found it because relation change and way of working change. Big cities now are empty with hurry, but more full of pain, but more full of nature and of playing in squares. But I think we have really to understand the meaning that that is a new time is facing to us, and perhaps in the rebuild of the try to accord this inner time, this human time, with the city time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Maria Francesca Merloni. It's very good to hear your voice and also your perspective coming from Italy that has undergone such a challenge over during the first semester of this year. And we can see, as you said, that the challenges of cities, many of them don't necessarily have the capacity to address the many challenges they have to face during the current times in this pandemic. Let me now invite Mr. Paulo Alexandre Barbosa. He's the mayor of Santos, the city of Santos in Brazil. Paulo, the floor is yours.
I'm Sally, and I just want to inform you that I will be representing the mayor of Santos, Mr. Paulo Alexandre Barbosa. My grants to the Friends of Unesco, seed networks and programs. Behalf of the mayor, it is an honor and a pleasure to be able to meet everyone. I appreciate the opportunity. I wish you were in Santos. We were preparing the city to receive you during the Creative Cities Annual Conference, but due to the pandemic, the invitation is open for a better opportunity. Santos City Hall prepared initiatives to combat the COVID-19 pandemic and help the residents in this difficult time. In order to keep body and mind healthy, online cultural actions were developed that focusing in training, entertainment, and physical activity, dance, crafts, gastronomy, music, photography, digital cultural factory. The project for artistic and cultural was adapted to the online format. Teachers and instructors offer virtual learning content in various artistic segments such as dance, music, theater, visual and media arts. Cultural time at home. This initiative focuses on sharing on social networks and the Secretariat of Culture YouTube channel, the training content of the Santos Symphonic Orchestra, Santos City Ballet, musical choros, dance school and school of scenic arts. Made in Santos. The program supports small creative business in Santos. The platform acts in an online display, entertainment, the exhibition and handcrafted products made by local entrepreneurs and artists free of charge. 500 exposed products, more than 200 posts of good deals and service, and 3,000 followers on Instagram. Other actions, accreditation and hiring of artists in this area of theater, dance, music, literature, visual arts and audiovisual, short films and web series to display online content on digital channels, financial and operational support for cultural festivals, especially to tools connected to cinema and audiovisual. Thank you.
We appreciate and thank Ms. Sally Storino. She's the focal point of the city of Santos for UNESCO Creative City film. So we welcome you and thank you for your intervention. Santos is a city that is just 2 hours away from São Paulo, one of the biggest cities in the world. And São Paulo is certainly one of the cities that are undergoing a major challenge with the number of cases in the COVID. So thank you so much, Mr. Sally, and we see the efforts of the city of Santos. Now let me invite to the floor Mr. Juma Asiango. He's the head of Safer Cities program of UN Habitat. Mr. Juma Asiango, please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much to UNESCO for inviting UN Habitat to the table. As you are all aware, urban areas have become indeed the most acute settlements within our global community affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And in this, we have particularly seen the urban poor most affected and most challenged by the COVID-19 response measures, control measures. Clearly, the density of cities is now at the fore of conversations to any of the COVID-19 responses. And if we are unable to actually find reasonable and comprehensive solutions around how to address the virus within these particular settlements, then our global effort to contain the transmission of the virus will be greatly affected. UN Habitat has put it to the fore the context of the informal settlements and slums across the world, as a large percentage of the population of our world today and of urban settlements live in these particular vulnerable neighborhoods. And the current solutions that we have of the virus, be it social distancing, be it contact tracing, they actually are challenged to be applied. It's challenging for national governments to find ways of applying this within these particular settlements. So UN Habitat is looking at this particular pandemic with a long-term recovery response, to look at what we need to do different, or what we hitherto did not actually do. It really pushes us to a point of catalyzing actions around the sustainable urban development challenge that brings cities to more mixed use, compact, and connected perspective. We need to begin to deal with the historical inequalities that have confronted our cities, towns, and villages in ways that help us to reimagine concepts such as safety in cities. The whole debate in the United States today around the police brutality surrounding the cases of certain segments of the population, and particularly the Black population, brings to the fore the question of the systemic challenges we face in our cities and towns. And it is something which the Sustainable Development Agenda calls for new thinking around some of the concepts on the local governance of our cities, towns, and villages. And so it is not any new aspect, but rather a real motivation for actors such as ourselves and practitioners around the world to only put to use the existing tools that have called for a move away from traditional ways and traditional models of approaching cities and towns. This new model requires us to look at the city beyond just the brick and mortar, to really embrace the living environment and to see cities for people and not people for cities.
Thank you so much. I very much appreciate Mr. Juma Asiango for your intervention and for reminding us on the various different situations of settlements and slums with systemic challenges, and also the new Sustainable Development Agenda, the SDGs, that has a lot to do with how cities could implement the 2030 agenda. Thank you so much. Let me now call on Camilo, Mr. Camilo Yunis Velosa. Camilo is the professor of Universidad Nacional de Colombia at Manizales. Camilo, please take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Can you allow me to share my screen, please? Thank you. Okay. On behalf of Manizales City, but especially on the different initiatives from Manizales that have been focused on art, culture, and education, compounded by different institutions, actors, and government, social, economic companies and institutions that have been leading this initiative. This is an honor to be here with you, thinking about how to rebuild all our cities after the pandemic. Manizales, few days ago, analyzed what happened in the city after the first 100 days when we start doing different actions in relation with pandemic and the different activities to face these difficult actions that we've been suffering in the whole the world, but especially in our country. Manizales is a very special city with a privileged location, and we could learn from other cities around the world and start doing actions very, very fast. On March the 4th, very at the beginning of the pandemic and the epidemic here in Colombia, we could start doing very clever activities as closing borders and start with yellow arts alerts and closing different public parks or public institutions that allow us to control in an effective way the effects of the pandemic in Manizales. It's been a very long route, and now we can start or restart doing other activities that allows us to have still a very good numbers, a very good data in relation with COVID. By the moment, this is the data of a couple days ago. We have 109 cases with 47 recovered patients, only 3 deaths, fortunately, and still 59 still active cases, with close to 4,000 suspect asymptomatic cases, with 3,000 negative cases by the date, with the numbers of Colombia at the whole country and Caldas on the right, that is our region. We have 4 learning cities in Colombia, and you can see the distribution of the cities on the left of the screen on the map of Colombia. And on the right, there is some stats very close to yesterday's data. With the right scale is the lethality in percentage in Colombia, in the different cities of Colombia. On the left scale is the incidence and the mortality. As you can see in Manizales, we have still a very good numbers, fortunately. Very low lethality rates and very low incidence and mortality rates in Colombia. I would like to focus on this. Manizales is a city with a destination for university higher education students in Colombia. Manizales is for...
Mr. Camilo, may I interject and ask you to conclude your brief intervention, please?
Yes, absolutely. This is the last one. Most of our students are coming from different parts of the country, and our most important effort is helping students that they are the future of our country and of the world. Thank you very much, and sorry for the time.
Okay, thank you very much, and it's actually very helpful to see the actual, a good and actual concrete example from Manizales in how you're approaching this current crisis that we are living. It's very good to know that Colombia has 4 learning cities that are collaborating jointly in addressing this. Thank you so much, Mr. Camilo Yunis. Let me now invite Ms. Lanke Taiwo. She's the Director of Water Resources from Lagos State, and she's going to be here joining us just right now. Thank you, Ms. Lanke.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I am Engineer Mrs. Lanke Taiwo, Director of Water Resources, as gladly been said. I'll be representing Mr. Lekan Shodende, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Environment and Water Resources. And I'll be talking about Lagos' response to COVID-19. As we all know, the urban water supply in Lagos is being handled by Lagos Water Corporation. Hence, water is supplied to residents by the Lagos Water Corporation. But we know that there are problems of coverage of the whole population. As we all know, that Lagos is an urban area that is being populated by almost 24 million now, as is being predicted. And so the population is being the only population that is being covered by now is only 15% that we're having. So the residents take care of the water by themselves as usual, as they used to do. But during this COVID-19 pandemic, the Lagos Water Corporation was able to supply water to the isolation centers, and also the other ones that have been covered before where the efforts were being intensified, and people were giving water for about 24%. You know, the only coverage is just a very, very small number. But other residents, other people, they fend for themselves. They dig boreholes, some dig shallow to deep wells to help during this pandemic. And there are some areas that water are being sold to pool by NGOs, then water also are being given by NGOs.
Okay, so it seems that we are having a connection problem with the internet. Let's give her. Mrs. Lanke, we cannot hear you. Can you just, I think you are back now to the floor.
Sorry, my line was a bit off. My line was a bit off. I'm sorry. So what I'm really saying is that the infectious disease hospital in Lagos, the isolation center, where the COVID-19 patients were being kept, was connected to regular water supply at that particular time because it was not connected before. So other new centers being provided within the premises also have been connected to water source. Efforts have also been made to make sure that all these water facilities are running 24/7. Engineer technicians and all essential workers are on duty for effective service delivery. We know that part of the protocol is to wash our hands and keep social distancing. Hand washing facilities were also made in the institutions, in the public places, markets, and health facilities. Advocacy on the need to provide and wash hands regularly also is ongoing. Efforts of government to expand and increase water facilities in order to cover more population is also ongoing, such as expanding of our Adiyan Phase 2 water works in Lagos, rehabilitation of some mini water works in order to cover all these places that water facilities are not covering. Then also, we have also another program that we carried out.
Okay, so it seems that Ms. Lanke Taiwo is having some internet problems again. Ms. Lanke, we lost you. So can you also just conclude your interventions, please?
Okay, in conclusion, the government also made efforts in order for us to integrate water resources management in Lagos by repositioning the former Minister of Environment. The new governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, renamed the SY Minister of the Environment as Ministry of the Environment and Water Resources, and also the institutional arrangement is ongoing right now. And I believe by the time we
Okay, so I think we should move on, and I would like to express our gratitude to Mrs. Lanke Taiwo, who is in Nigeria, in Lagos. She came as representing Mr. Likan Shodeinde, who is the Permanent Secretary of Lagos State Ministry of Environment. And we appreciate your intervention and sharing with us something that is important for us to think of in terms of their access to water. That we take for granted that it's easy to address the pandemic if we are in a context that have abundant water and abundant of access to clean water in different places. But what you have shared with us enlightened us to think of the different contexts that sometimes have really difficulties in terms of providing or ensuring easy access to clean water, to wash hands, and to help address the current COVID-19 pandemic. So I would like to thank all the speakers and presenters who shared with us today. And let me start with a question, a first question to each one of you. Each one of you will have 1 minute to address this question, which is, what is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on cities' role and action in different development aspects? So again, we would like to ask you to focus on one particular urban aspect from your context. Thank you very much. Let me start with Ms. Maria Francesca Merloni, please.
Excuse me, I didn't understand very well because the connection is not very good. So
okay, no, it's okay. So the question is, what do you think is the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on cities' role in action in different development aspects? And we would like to ask you, if you can, Ms. Francesca Merloni, to share with us specifically any particular, from the angle of any particular urban aspect.
Yes, my thought and what I'm observing is that cities, as big cities, are acting as they are like little, and so I hope that let's say people for cities, I say that perhaps a new urban model will be investigated from this pandemic change of being and of living. I think the model, the one of little town and very connected each other, because these allow population protected. We are experimenting a new fragility, a very deep need of people to be protected in social and in personal lives. So I think this is the lesson we are learning in this moment.
Thank you very much, Ms. Francesca Merloni. It's
Thank
very
you.
good to hear you. Thank you. Let me invite Juma Asiango. Juma Asiango, would you please share with us what your thoughts are on this question?
Yes, I think COVID-19 particularly has exposed the question of the spike in domestic violence in our cities today. And this is part and parcel of what shows about the socialization of our cities today in terms of the continuum between public spaces and private spaces. Nurturing the ideals of safety as a public good will require us to rethink our concepts of safety and security in our cities to one that is more socially integrating, that sees cities as sites of social interaction and exchange, and builds the way we approach safety in city as a common responsibility for all. The perspective of looking at the differentiatedness in our cities are built with this heterogeneous entity, is the strength of what city living is all about. We need therefore to inculturate into the policies, the programs of our cities, the aspect of differentiatedness across gender, across age, across culture, and to see this permeating the systems of planning, management, and governance that are then delivered at the level of land, housing, infrastructure, and basic services.
Thank you very much. Camilo, Eunice?
Yes. Well, this is a very interesting question, and I would like to focus on education, especially because this is a very important aspect, as I said before in Manizales. If we take into account that maybe the most important aspect for sustainable development in any country is learning and education, maybe the most important impact for Manizales city, but I think that in any city is to keep enrolled students in education and especially in higher education. We are very worried about a lot of students that are foreign students for us in Manizales and how to keep them interested in coming again to Manizales and keep Manizales as a best destination for higher education in Colombia. So most of the efforts now, of course, after the social economic aspects, that is the basic, must be focused on higher education and education in general to assure that the future of our country will be based on the knowledge of the best strategy to economic and social development in Colombia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Camilo. May I ask Mrs. Lanke Taiwo to take the floor?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, once again. I would like to talk about how could cities continue their role as public service providers, that is in terms of access to water in times of crisis. I would love to say that we should, as a country and as a city, I would say we should always be ready for crisis at every time. We should increase budgetary provision, also not for external support agencies to assist in times of crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask any of the speakers if you have any comment, additional comment or question before we close this session. And you can just maybe open your mic, or if you can raise your hand so that I can see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank you, Camilo.
I think
Juma Siango, let's hear you. Thank you.
I would just like to close by saying that the whole aspect of looking at cities as sources of urban development and moving away from them as bad outcomes of development is a key way forward. And this means building on social capital. This means on linking education to literacy, building arts, culture, and sports as ways of re-socializing communities without looking at anyone as born criminal. We have a whole huge social capital to build on the sustainability of cities, and this is what we need to focus on. UN Habitat will be trying to get this spotlight to cities by way of a 40 days Safer Cities Challenge, running from the International Day of Peace to World Cities Day on the 31st of October. And we hope that together with UNESCO, we will be able to bring that aspect of creativity of cities to bear on hard subjects like safety in the city.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for each one of our panelists and speakers today for sharing with us perspectives from Colombia, from Italy, from Nigeria. We appreciate also the city of Santos for joining us today, and Mr. Asiango, who shared the perspective from UN Habitat. Thank you very much. Also, Ms. Francesca Merloni, UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador for Creative Cities, for joining us today. Thank you for all the audience who are joining us today. We are now closing this first session on cities' response to COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vilela, and thank you to all speakers for this enlightening discussion. I will now invite the speakers from the next e-debate, Learning from Early Recovery. to kindly switch on their camera. I will now invite David Wilson, Director of Bradford, UNESCO Creative Cities of Film, to lead this second discussion. David, you have the floor.
Thank you, Denise. The host has turned my camera off, so if the host could kindly turn me back on, I will start. Can you hear me okay? Yes. Oh, and you can see me now. Hello, everyone. My name is David Wilson. I'm Director of Bradford UNESCO City of Film in the UK and expert advisor to the UK Commission on the development of creative cities. The next panel discussion is about learning from recovery. So more than 4 months after the global outbreak of the pandemic, many cities around the world have started to ease measures and work towards early recovery. In some instances, lockdown is relatively straightforward. Gradually reopening up is considerably more complex, and early recovery is perhaps the most difficult phase for central governments to devise clear guidelines, as we've seen from around the world. Thanks to this catalyzing role, cities also tend to be the beating heart of countries. So this next session will consider how cities have been addressing and will continue to address the particularly challenging role of the early recovery phase, where lockdown measures are slowly eased and a broad range of sectors have had to be restarted. This requires measures that balance safety with recovery, while cities are re-establishing their role as social, cultural, and economic hubs for the region or for the country. So I'm delighted our first speaker is Ms. Geraldina Gonzalez de la Vega Hernandez, I hope I pronounced that correctly, President of the Council to Prevent and Eliminate Discrimination of Mexico City. Geraldina, over to you.
David, thank you very much. You pronounced it correctly. I'm sorry, I have a very long name and it's always this thing, but thank you very much. I would ask you to let me share the screen, please. So I don't know if you're looking at my presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah, we have it now, thank you.
Great. Well, first of all, I would like to thank UNESCO and of course Linda Tinio for the invitation. It's an honor for us in Mexico City to share our perspectives also from the Anti-Discrimination Council of Mexico City. Well, as you know, we are still in confinement and we have a traffic light system and we're still in red light. But there are plans for the deconfinement, especially for the economic and tourism sector. And during each light, red, orange, yellow, and green, there will be different allowances, and the balance is between health and welfare. But we have to put our accent in discrimination. So I would like to tell that, well, the pandemics did not provoke the inequality that we are now seeing. It just raised the curtain and allowed everyone to look at the inequality gaps, the unfairness, the social injustice. So I'd like to talk about the vulnerable groups. We've in the council identified 3 types. Looking with an intersectoral or intersectional perspective and non-discrimination perspective, and differential impacts, the difference between people at higher risk of severe COVID-19 and people in vulnerable situation or priority attention groups, and of course with a universal access perspective. We've identified these 3 types of groups that are the high-risk groups for COVID. The second are the priority attention groups that are recognized in our local constitution, like women, like indigenous people, like people with disabilities, and so on. And of course, healthcare workers and clean workers, for example, that are receiving differential impacts of the sickness, but also of the measures taken. So our findings are that quarantine is a privilege. Health measures like hand washing, access to soap, hand sanitizer are also a privilege. Not everyone could or can stay home. For example, sex workers, domestic workers, homeless people, people in prison, in shelters, in psychiatry institutions, migrants, refugees, and of course, health workers, clean workers, self-employed people, or people that are doing essential services. Home is also not a safe place for everyone, especially women, children, teens and young people, elder people, LGBT people, especially teens and young people that haven't gotten out of the closet, so as to speak, with their families, domestic workers, and for some people with disabilities. Also, we live in a community, but safe distance is not an option. This is like an expression from some groups: indigenous people, some African Mexican people, homeless people, and some sex workers. For some groups, water is not accessible. Homeless people, people living in prisons, migrant people, and of course, poor people. Also, there's another group that says we live with a health condition or needs access to health services or treatments. And this is particularly problematic because, health services are taking COVID people, sick people, so they cannot provide the normal treatments or services. And this is especially problematic for pregnant people, for children, for trans people, for people living with HIV, for people with disabilities, or for elder people. And there's also another group that says, well, we cannot afford sanitizer, face masks, soap, and so on. And these are primarily poor people and unemployed people, but as we know, we have to look intersectional, we have to have a transversal look at all of these differential impacts. And well, this is particularly challenging. So we have identified our challenges, which are, well, to build inclusive cities, that Mexico City become a more inclusive city. And actually, when we talk about this new normality, we are, well, really saying that we don't want to go back to these cities where we have this huge injustice, that this huge inequality. So we have to include and to stop this inequality gap from widening. Our opportunities are that the pandemic made visible many inequalities and unfairness, and they are right now on the table. So we don't have to look away, we cannot look away, and we have to take this opportunity to go on and to build more inclusive and just, fair cities. So as for cities preparedness, Mexico City's new government was preparing for a crisis like we had in 2017 with an earthquake, but we were not thinking for a response without the citizens. We are a very solidarity citizens. We have always taken these measures. We go out and help the others, but right now we cannot. So we have to think of new ways of being there without putting anyone in danger. So this is one of the greatest challenge we have.
Geraldina, I have to bring it to a close there, if that's okay.
I'm at the end.
Thank you.
We have to take a look at this new situation. And well, we have taken a look exactly at where our challenges are and where to put our focus on. So I will close with that, and I will take the other ideas for the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that very enlightening insight. I think there are common themes that are developing from the discussions. Of course, there are, with inequality gaps and social injustice, and we'll come back to those in the questions.
Thank you.
I would like now to introduce Ms. Andrea Laverde, the Deputy Director of the International Relations of the Office of the Mayor of Bogota. Hi, Andrea, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I just want to make sure that you can hear and see me.
You're very quiet. If you could be closer to the microphone, please.
Is it better now?
That's better, thank you.
Perfect. And can you see my screen?
Yes, you're still very quiet, but we can see your screen.
Okay, I'm not really sure. Okay, I think I'll just go like that, and you
Yeah,
just tell me.
that's better. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, Mayor Claudia Lopez couldn't be here, so she sends her thanks to the UNESCO City platform for giving us this opportunity to discuss how to make this crisis an opportunity to promote more inclusive and sustainable cities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about like what has been our approach throughout both the response, but also the reopening process, because we have tried to place the lives of citizens at the core of the response and protect both their health and socioeconomic situation. And for this, we have first thought of increasing, of course, the capacity of the health system, but also to guarantee the equal care of every type of citizen. This has been especially important now that we are in the reopening process. And what we did just last week was that we changed the way we were taking care of the health care system, and we took control of both the private and public networks, thinking that due to reopening, ICU's occupation would increase, so that we could guarantee that every citizen could have a proper health care, no matter what their type of affiliation to the health system was. This is one of the very important things we did. But we also focused on having differential approaches throughout our city and treating it as the heterogeneous city it is. So first, regarding citizens, we've tried to create differentiated programs depending on their vulnerabilities. So we have created basic income that's articulated with money from the national government, but also from the local government for people living in poverty. We've also developed special care for women to help them fight violence in their homes. But we've also developed programs to help victims of conflict. Bogota has internal displaced population from the country, but we've also have a big migrant population from Venezuela and other places from Latin America. So we've also taken care of how to treat differentiatedly these two types of population. And this one is important mainly in the reopening process, but we've had like the formal, we have created processes for formal and informal businesses and for artists. And lastly, we've created a differentiated approach within our territories, treating our localities differently depending on their status of the crisis. So if I might show you here, we have special care zones. We're monitoring each locality and their advance on the crisis, and we've created special care zones. These are the zones which have higher rates of contagious, high population densities, and higher people living with risk factors and morbidities. So we are able to impose strict lockdowns in these neighborhoods, while the rest of the city is able to go out and reopen the economy. So the way we have reopened the economy has been a sequential process. We have we've implemented a 24-hour-day scheme where different sectors of the economy are able to open in different time slots. This allows us to prevent congestion in public transport. So as you can see, construction workers only can go out from 10 to 7, manufacturing from 1 to 5 in the morning, commerce from noon to midnight. And we've led the slot of 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. only for essential sectors of the economy, for health workers, for food supply. And this has allowed us to keep the public transport system below the 35% of occupation, which has been our goal. Sure. And secondly, we've imposed a registration process for businesses who want to reopen, so that we can monitor their mobility protocols and their biosecurity protocols. Within the biosecurity protocols, we have created a system to register who goes to a store and who doesn't. So if we have cases of contagion, we can trace them down. And well, lastly, I just want to talk about a little bit. Yes, this one is last.
Yeah, just if you can, please wrap up now. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. So we've also implemented help for business to actually reopen. We have created processes both to formal and informal workers and to special disadvantaged population in this context, which have been artists. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Andrea. That sounds like a really comprehensive set of plans in place in Bogota. It's very impressive the way that the city have structured the zones and trying to ensure that life goes on and that the city can be serviced in some kind of way. It sounds very comprehensive. I will keep my comments brief because I'm conscious about the Q&A and we want to get as much as we can out of the Q&A at the end. So I thank you, Andrea. I'd like to introduce Mr. Jordi Pasqual, who is coordinator of the Culture Committee at the United Cities and Local Governments. We may know it as UCLG. Jordi, you have the floor. Thank you. Do you have your microphone on?
Yes, now.
Could you speak up just a little bit closer, please?
Yes. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, David, for the introduction. And overall, thank you to UNESCO for this opportunity. Congratulations for this seminar we are holding today. I am representing here the World Organization of Cities, United Cities and Local Governments, with members in all the continents, with 7 regional sections: North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Middle East, Eurasia, Asia Pacific, as well as a Forum of Regions and a metropolitan section. We are fully committed to local democracy. We are fully committed to the co-creation of the cities of the future, fully committed to leave no one behind and leave no place behind. Our membership is composed by cities, by intermediary cities, small cities, villages, regions, and rural areas also. And we are a democratic organization. Our presidency, our presidential team is elected every 3 years. For the pandemic, we wrote a decalogue, which is guiding our work. 10 points, which you can see on the screen. First one, guaranteeing public services. This has been obvious in the outbreak. The need to rely more than ever, the way we have to rely more than ever in public services after some decades of public services being somehow made, put under question, let's say it this way. Second, the importance of financial packages of support, especially to those communities, to those professionals that are at the forefront of the fight against the pandemic. Third, finding new ways to consumption and production, proximity, based on proximity. Fourth, we need a Green Deal. We need bolder steps to combat climate change. Fifth, human rights, new citizenship, new freedoms, renewed democracy, also digitally. Sixth, equality. The pandemic has shown that although the disease affects us all, let's say some people are more equal than others, and we cannot afford that. We have to be together in this crisis. Seventh, territories that care for their public providers. We need the civil servants and we need the providers of basic services to be well treated, to be acknowledged, to be respected, to be the basis of our commons. Also, this was not guaranteed in the last years. 8th point, culture. Culture as an antidote for the secondary effects of the crisis. Creativity, heritage, freedoms, diversity at the forefront of the cities we are building. 9, an interurban system, cities, metropolis, intermediary cities, rural areas, we are all dependent on the rest. And 10th, not the least one, multilateralism. We need to build a truly multilateral world. Let me finish with 3 more documents that we have written during this pandemic. They are more related to our work in the Culture Committee. You can see on the left our report on culture, cities, and the COVID-19 pandemic. We released this report a week ago, and it analyzes the more than 200 contributions that we received from our members and from networks we are very closely working with, including, of course, all the UNESCO initiatives for the crisis. Second document in the middle, you have our statement, the Culture 2030 Goal statement that we wrote together with other global cultural networks, ICOMOS, IFLA, the International Federation of Libraries, IMC, the International Music Council, and other. We, in this statement, we insist culture should be at the center of the response, and more than ever, at the center of any reformulation of the SDGs. We are extremely sorry there is no culture goal in the SDGs, and we believe that if there is a possibility that the SDGs are refocused or rethought, well, the pandemic showed the centrality of culture for people's lives everywhere. Culture is global and goalable, and any long-term plan, any say UN Decade of Action remastering should place culture at the center. And last document is the Rome Charter, the 2020 Rome Charter, on how the right to participate in cultural life can be at the center of urban policies. That's all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jordi. Very succinct and well put together. Definitely the UCLG reports, the ones that I've seen, Culture 21 and the other documents, are well worth accessing to see what other areas and other cities are doing and how we can collectively work together on some of this. And obviously the Decalogue, 10 steps, and the SDGs, there's lots of people, there's lots of thought about the SDGs becoming more prominent and a roadmap globally for coming out of this pandemic. Thank you, Jordi. I'm going to move swiftly on to our next speaker. I'm acutely aware of time. So can I introduce to you now Mr. Vimlendu Jar, environmentalist and founder of Shwekar. Vim, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So good afternoon, everyone. I think some of you reported on what your cities are doing. I'm not going to talk about what my city is doing. In fact, I'm actually going to talk about what it should not be doing when it is trying to resurrect itself or re-erect itself. So when we're talking about recovery, primarily, what is the issue that we're trying to recover from? And is recovery only an economic recovery, or if the impact that this COVID-19 has caused, or the divide that this COVID-19 has caused is on many other sectors, why should the focus be only on opening again or recovery in that sense? So my request to everyone here and to my city government and my government and all the other governments of different parts of the world is to really look at recovery differently, because the normal that we were talking about, or the new normal that we're trying to imagine, it has to be very, very distant from the last normal that we were actually imagining. So just by shifting, business hours, or by just shifting a few things here and there, just rearranging the graph or rearranging the map is not going to solve the problem, because what this crisis today has done, it has exposed cities, it has exposed city planners, it has exposed every proponent of urbanism or urbanization, or everyone who thought that they were experts of cities. Now, first of all, we need to understand what is a city, as in why did we imagine these cities when we started looking at these cities? Cities were meant for people. As in, imagine New Delhi, where I'm speaking from right now. The current population is around 23 million. As per the UN report, by 2028, the population is going to be around 38 million, which means that it is going to be most populous city of the world. Now, when it becomes the most populous city, who owns this city? And this pandemic right now, the COVID crisis, has actually exposed that city is not owned by the poor. I'm very, very sure that you have seen different visuals coming from different parts of the world of the pandemic. Of course, we saw some very sad visuals coming from Europe of dead bodies and of people in distress. In India, I don't know if you saw, but there were thousands and thousands of people who actually walked back or cycled back to their homes from their cities. So cities threw them out. Was it a said thing? Did the city, as per law, throw them out? No, cities didn't throw them out as per law, but they were such unwanted category of people, unaccepted by design, that they felt that it was safer to go back to the place of origin. And first of all, we need to understand that the place of origin, the reason why they had migrated to the cities is because there was no economic opportunity back home. Now, when they have gone back to those villages, is there an economic opportunity? No. So when we dismantle a city, and when these people, I'm talking about almost 40% of New Delhi and of different parts of India, when lockdown could be a safety measure for you and I, work from home could be luxury for some of us. As the initial guest speaker said, that social distancing is a privilege in cities like Mumbai or cities like Delhi. So there's a health crisis that pandemic has exposed, which primarily talks about that, imagine a city that doesn't have a hospital or that doesn't have enough hospital beds. So it has enough malls, enough stores, enough fancy boutique shops, enough flyovers, enough car showrooms, but doesn't have enough beds and doesn't have enough medicines. And therefore, when you and I are advocating for recovery and reopening, do we really want to be, as a UNESCO, on this platform at least, want to go back to that model which was extremely exploitative to two sets of people, exploitative to people and exploitative to the planet? One thing, as I'm sure that is not just an India story, but from all around the world, one image that we all were romanticizing about when the lockdown was on for the last 2-3 months was beautiful blue sky. At some places, we saw dolphins. We saw wild animals on our streets. Do you think this recovery plan that you and I are discussing today, or our city governments are discussing today, will bring back those dolphins and bring back that fresh air? No. In fact, India, for that matter, or my city, to recover from the losses that it has incurred in the last 3 months, the economic losses that it has incurred, it wants to really restart and restart more aggressively. And who is going to pay the cost? There are two casualties of this kind of haphazard, mindless, speedy recovery. The planet, because you would want to industrialize, you want to open very, very soon, and environmental norms will be violated and will be compromised. One. And two is the labor norms will be violated. It is already happening that in many parts of the world, and in my country as well, they're saying that no, the labor rights of the workers' rights will not stand the same as it was, because we all need to gear towards a resurrection of economy. So,
okay, Vim.
Yes, absolutely. So
Thank
my
you.
last line to all of this is that we need to really reimagine our city, not fall in that recovery mode, which is extremely exploitative and capitalistic, but press that pause button and maybe rethink, reinvent, and resurrect. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Vim, so much. And yes, the sound of the birds in my locality, I've never heard birds sound so strong when the lockdown was on. So poignant remarks there about the city not being owned by the poor, and the fact that many people just had to flee New Delhi and other mega cities because they weren't safe and there was no provision for them. It really is the stark reality of where we are today in the world. So I'm just conscious of time, and we've had some fantastic input for now. So if you don't mind, thank you, Vim. We'll move on to our next speaker, who is Miss Jai Zhao, a researcher at the Wuhan Academy of Educational Sciences. Jai, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, and the floor is yours.
Could you see my screen?
Yes, that's lovely, thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Wuhan restart in action. On April the 8th, after 76 days of lockdown, Wuhan pressed the restart button. On May the 14th, Wuhan launched a public nucleic acid screening on novel coronavirus, focusing on nucleic acid testing and screening of nearly 9.9 million residents, with 300 asymptomatic infected persons, making up 3 over 100,000 of the total number of people tested. As of June the 15th, Wuhan had already created a record of clearing all 8 items of COVID-19 indicators. Wuhan has proved to the world with scientific evidence that Wuhan is safe and Wuhan people are healthy. First of all, unblock traffic in the city and let people flow. On April the 8th, Wuhan's public transportation and subway lines resumed operation. In early May, the average daily volume of subway passengers returned to the million-class level. With the speeding of subways and trains again and the gradual recovery of flights, the city's network traffic is recovering. Work arrangements such as temperature measurement, code scanning, and regular disinfection are carried out in an orderly manner, with no reduction in prevention and control efforts. Secondly, open public places and let the city take action. With the guarantee of protective measures, public places such as shopping malls, supermarkets, hotels, and restaurants are gradually open. A total of 21 scenic sports in Wuhan have announced that they would make reservations for tourists. Meanwhile, when entering indoor public places, the citizens are still guided to take good care of themselves. Thirdly, actively serve enterprises and activate the economy. Wuhan has put forward 21 preferential policies for enterprises from 5 aspects: reducing the burden on enterprises, strengthening financial support, ensuring the employment of enterprises, intensifying the implementation of policies, and optimizing and improving services in a bid to help them resume work and production. Last but not least, refine campus management to enable students to resume classes smoothly. On May the 6th, grade 3 of senior high school in our city resumed classes. On May the 20th, grade 3 of junior high school resumed classes. Wuhan municipal government has equipped the whole city's schools with 4 automatic infrared thermometers. Protective materials such as masks, disinfectant, and temperature measuring gums were put in place before the school started. Wuhan Education Bureau has issued the guidelines for school prevention and control of COVID-19 epidemic, launched the work of identifying the school or campus epidemic prevention standards, and has striven to form a closed loop of early preparation, early detection, early isolation, and early disposal. We are firmly convinced that with the joint participation and efforts of the whole society, Wuhan is bound to win double victories in epidemic prevention and control, and economic and social development, so that the city will regain its vitality and vigor. Thank you for your attention.
I think we've lost audio there for a moment. Hello? Can everyone hear me? Hi, we've got you back, Jai. We just missed your last closing remarks, but we could see them on the screen. So thank you so much for your input there. I suppose some feedback in terms of Wuhan now being safe and the lessons that many other cities and indeed countries can learn from the lockdown principles that Wuhan adopted early on, and things like the infrared thermometers in colleges and universities, and in a safe way to start to open up society again, so that people are confident to come out into society. Thank you so much for your contribution. We do have the questions now, and I have one from a member of the public, but I also have another one I want to start us with. If you could keep your responses brief, because we are up against it on time, but it's fascinating how much information we can pack into these sessions. So my primary question really to you all, and I'll come round you in order for some responses, and we've answered some of this in the presentations that you've given, but just to dig a little deeper really, what does recovery mean for cities in the current and immediate post-COVID-19 context? So the objective, do we go back to normal? Is there a new normal that people talk about? Or is it ever transforming those resilient cities? So what do we, as a panel, are we going back to normal? Is there a new normal? How do we get there? Or is this ever transforming and thus resilient cities, so that we're ready for whatever, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's another pandemic? And I just very briefly wonder if I could get your view on that. Geraldina.
Well, yes, I was also saying that, well, I don't agree, and we as an institution do not agree at all with this concept of new normality.
Okay.
Because we cannot go back to normal. And I loved what Wim just said, because we do not want this recovery and reopening to take us back to this model where we had this disequality gap that was so wide, and that we are looking at right now, that it's not helping anyone, and that is actually causing that many people get sick just because of this inequality.
Okay.
So I think we have to look at the resilience concept to recover and adjust. But the challenge we are looking at is not only the pandemic, it's the previous situation that we live.
Yeah. Indeed it is. And I wonder then, Andrea, whether you might have a view on that question.
Yes, definitely. So I think we're all really aligned in this. Mayor Claudia Lopez has been emphatic in saying that we need to understand that this pandemic can also be an opportunity to be more ambitious in some social agendas we were in depth with in society. And this is an area where the Bogota government had a situation where at the time that the crisis was going on, we were planning our next 4-year development plan. So we had the opportunity to revisit that plan and understand which were the goals that would allow us to build a more resilient society, and that will also allow us to reopen our economy faster, but with a social and environmental focus on them. So we've decided that 50% of our plan is going to have a special input and a special tracking system. This includes topics such as the basic income that due to the pandemic we created and that the city is striving to maintain. But it also speaks about a care system for women. We're developing a huge system within every agency of the local government has an input in order to create a system that redistributes and recognizes care for women. But it also speaks about mobility for us. We are really putting all of our efforts, and most of the 500,000 jobs that the new development plan seeks to create are focused on building new sustainable transport infrastructure. So we're speaking about the subway lines, but we're mainly speaking about bike lanes. We're speaking about pedestrian lanes.
Yeah.
We're speaking about reconverting our buses to electrical. So these are some of the ways in which we're trying to advance this social agenda in order to make our city more resilient and more equal.
Thank you. Thank you. A fantastic answer. Jordi, you will have a view, I'm no doubt, on this question.
Certainly. We fully share what Geraldina and Andrea have just said. Let me also say that in the Culture Committee, the Culture Committee is chaired by Mexico City and vice-chaired by Bogota. So we feel fully represented by what Geraldina and Andrea have said. Let me add something from a more, say, international debate on culture and development and how what the pandemic is bringing to us. I already said the proof that culture is central to people's lives, fully central, not just a tool for economic growth, not just the creative industries that very often disempower communities and people.
Yeah.
So something that we need to insist in this in the next years is culture at the center of sustainable development. Culture as the fourth pillar of sustainable development, not in hierarchy, but adding culture, meaning creativity, diversity, and heritage at the center of any international, national, and local plan for the future.
Thank you. And Vim, if you can keep the response fairly short, because we are running out of time and I want to get another question in. So is it the new normal? Is it resilient cities? Are we back to where we were? What's the answer there?
I think the new normal, as I already mentioned earlier, cannot be back to the previous normal. It needs a dismantling or disruption of a different kind. I think we need to look at local and immediate economy. We have to look at local and immediate environment, and we have to look at local and immediate health, public health in that sense. I think in the new normal or super normal or any normal that we create, the new cities that we're imagining, we will have to look at linkage between public health and public economy and the public itself, because we might just have a farce of democracy, but I think this democracy or this model hasn't served everyone and it has not been equitable. So new normal needs to be equitable and needs to be ecologically sensitive to everyone.
Thank you. And finally, Jay, do you have an answer to that first question or an opinion?
So could you hear me this time?
Yeah, we've got you now.
Okay, that's fine. For recovery, we insist on coordinating prevention and control with the social and economic development, with the joint participation and efforts of the whole society, and guided by the urban spirit of dare to be the first and pursue excellence. Wuhan will face the epidemic more rationally, successfully survive the extraordinary period of fighting against the epidemic, and strive to win double victories in epidemic prevention and control and economic and social development, so that the city will regain its vitality and vigor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your responses. We have time for one more quick question, for quick answers to this question, which is coming from a member of the audience from Pau RQ. So this is the question. Higher demography and lower income are aspects of the most vulnerable groups. What specific actions could be implemented without aggravating these very same aspects or develops a paternalistic dynamic? So we've all talked about vulnerable groups. We've all mentioned lower income and in some form. So what specific actions could be? We've kind of teased a little bit of the answer, but I wonder if you've got anything more specific, Geraldina, for this question from the audience.
Yes, well, the Mexico City's mayor is committed to this inclusive and equality principle. So we've been implementing from different secretaries of the government, for example, an insurance program for unemployed people, loan programs for small and medium businesses, access to food and water for low-income people, and I think these are some examples.
Yeah.
And we, from the council, we are making a report that we are doing together with the groups. We are talking with them directly and asking them what should we be doing in order to well, take this solving these problems with their point of view. We think it's particularly important to strengthen democracy and participation, and that the design of the measures are done with the people.
Yes,
Together with the people, talking with them.
So crucial to moving this whole thing forward, that people are involved in that decision-making process. Andrea, do you have something brief to add to that, please?
Yes, so as I told you, Bogota has developed a social plan to care for this population right now. But if your your question has to do with how to avoid paternalistic policies, I would say that the main thing cities have to do is to create a system that enables vulnerable populations to have the ability to maintain themselves. And this means, of course, having broad and of quality education system mainly, but also trying to fight all of the disadvantages and the structures that racism and classism and chauvinism have in our society.
Thank you. That's a fantastic, succinct answer. Jordi?
The same. I could, of course, I coincide with what Geraldina and Andrea are saying. Let me add something else, which is not directly linked to the crisis, but to the Black Lives Matter, and with the need to decolonize cultural policies, meaning that we have to listen to all corners around the world and to listen to their narratives on what is colonialism, and without fear. We are here together. We are the earth. We are inhabitants on the earth, and we cannot rely the future of our world in a few colonial narratives. We need to hear from everybody, all corners, all people.
Thank you. Very, very valid point. Wim, please keep it brief if you can.
Yes. You know, I think one of the reasons why we have arrived at this junction right now because of COVID, one, of course, the virus is deadly, but the other is that in last few decades, in a lot of these developing and developed countries and in economies, we have looked at private solution to public problems. You know, and that is something that we need to reverse, because look at our hospitals, look at our education system, look at our mobility. We, by design as a system, what our governments have promoted, and we have, and our corporations have said that we need to fetch our own water. You have to buy your private water, your private, car, your private hospital and a private school, as if private means good. No, public needs to mean good, and that is when it will be equitable. You need to have a government hospital and a government school and a government public transport, and government is the custodian of our air and our water. And the last point is that imagine in India, 1.5 million people die because of air pollution every year. Now that needs to be a big issue, but that doesn't attract attention of our governments as much as this virus is attracting, which is good, as I'm not saying don't address this pandemic, but we have been dying, and the poorest of the poor have been dying all this while, and governments don't pay that attention, and therefore we need to really think about it as well.
Thank you. And the final word, Jai, to you in Wuhan.
Well, I agree with the former speakers, and I want to add an example. In terms of the economy, Wuhan has implemented a phased reduction and exemption of social security fees for enterprises, reduced the price of electricity and gas for enterprises, alleviated the rent burden of small and micro enterprises and individual privately or individually owned businesses, and carried out preferential policies such as temporarily postponing repayment of principal and interest on loans for small and medium-sized enterprises, and adding new preferential interest rate loans to help enterprises quickly resume orderly production. A number of measures will be taken in parallel, which will accelerate the return of Wuhan's economy to normal and quickly release its economic vitality. And in education, during the epidemic, we also paid special attention to such groups as children of frontline anti-epidemic personnel, students from families with financial difficulties, students who could neither study online nor watch TV, and students who are not in Wuhan. Moreover, we solved their learning problems by distributing learning materials, coordinating the provision of qualified places or related equipment, helping to coordinate signal reception, and arranging special distance tutoring for them. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for your contribution. That's, for me, and I'm sure for our audience, has been a fascinating discussion and very, very timely, done within the time restraints. Just to sum up, before I hand over to Denise, is that the feeling is that we can't really go back to what was before. And if it is the term the new normal, it has to be a different normal. It has to include the people of the city who are the city. And that's everyone in the city, not just the people who are in affluent positions that make up the city. This has to include citizens, and that culture has to be the beating heart of cities, that it's not all about commercial aspects. And we've also discussed the environmental challenges that we face and how we can use some of the results of this pandemic, this global lockdown, for good, for the good of society going forward. So thank you to everyone around the world who has joined us on this panel discussion, and I hope very much that we will meet again at some point in the future. Thank you, take care, and back to Denise at UNESCO.
Merci beaucoup, David. Merci beaucoup à tous les intervenants.
Thank you, David. Thank you to all the speakers for sharing your ideas, your experiences. Now we are moving on to panel number 3. So I'm going to ask the various speakers to turn on their cameras, the video, and I'm going to give the floor to Ariel Miller, who is going to be the moderator for this session about imagining the cities of tomorrow.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Very, very pleased to be with you here today. I think that we have a topic that is really of central importance and follows on very nicely from the previous session, and I think invites us to use our imaginations precisely not to reproduce the past, given, I think, the deep flaws that were already identified in the previous session with respect to the current functioning of this particular way of organizing human presence on the planet. And I formulated in that particular way because I think we can begin to imagine fundamentally different ways of organizing our presence on the planet, and perhaps begin to kind of tease out the ideas that would in some ways run contrary to much of the expectations that were powerful at the end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st about the dominance of one particular way of organizing human habitation. With that introduction, I'm very glad to have a terrific panel to introduce here. We are going to be very constrained for time, as everybody knows, and I would like to begin with Mr. Wahaba, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, if you could take the floor.
Thank you very much, Riel, and a pleasure for me to be with you in this panel. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, very well.
So from just very quickly from my perspective as to what type of a city will emerge out of this COVID-19 pandemic and crisis. I think one of the main findings that we're discovering right now is that the shorthand and typical perception that density is what caused us to face the issue of this pandemic is, I think, by now proven to be rather incorrect, in the sense that obviously density and the concentration of more people in a given unit of space will, all else equal, increase the chances of viral transmission. But the reality is it's not just about density as an average figure per se, but it's about density in the way it's managed. This means that places that are dense, but at the same time lack the housing conditions, whether in terms of overcrowding or poor housing conditions, lack the public infrastructure, especially in terms of individual water supply and sanitation situations, because there are many places in the world, slums, informal settlements, where the existing infrastructure is communal water taps and communal public toilets, where people therefore would have to gather, and therefore there is an increased chance of viral transmission. And at the same time, places where density is poorly managed in the sense of a lack of public spaces, then these become the vectors for increased transmission risk. So it's not density per se, it's the way density is managed and specifically mismanaged and turns into overcrowding. So when we take this finding and we start, fast forward, this notion that a post-pandemic world will see the demise of cities, will see migration to the suburbs or to rural areas, on account of digitization, I don't think that reality will materialize. But at the same time, I do believe that we are going to see improvements in our cities and in the management of density and the management of public space that will ensure that livability conditions are improved, and at the same time, while leveraging what cities are best known for, which are agglomeration, diversity, and inclusion. So we're going to see much more public spaces, wider sidewalks, much more cycling lanes, much more conversion of the mobility matrix, towards, the use of non-motorized transport. We're going to see much more investment into digital infrastructure, much more thinking about strengthening the way cities prepare themselves to face emergencies and pandemic responses, basically. So preparedness and response capacity to these types of crises than we've ever seen before. We're going to also start thinking to see some adjustments to the supply chains. I think cities are going to start looking at more localized supply chains, in terms of provisioning for food, etc., because these types of disruptions to global supply chains are going to leave a lasting mark. So we'll see cities looking at that. And finally, we're going to see an acceleration of existing trends. So we have been seeing trends, increasing trends of telework, of online education, online shopping, etc. And what will happen is that with a continued investment in digitalization, these trends are going to accelerate going forward, meaning that what will attract us to a city is no longer going to be that I live close to my job, because now I can live, somewhere else and actually connect to my job, but it will be the amenities, the quality of life, the diversity, the inclusion, the culture that will be the magnets that will draw us towards the city. Back to you, Ariel.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. I think just a little thought. It reminds me of the fact that when Henry Ford invented the assembly line that allowed us to have the mass production automobile, I don't think climate change was what was worrying Henry back in those days. And I just wonder if when we decided that it was acceptable to create the agglomerations with the supply chains that they require, whether we're separated or organized with more space or not, and perhaps even with more space, the energy intensity could even be greater. We were worrying about the same carbon weight and load on the planet. And so these kinds of unintended consequences become important issues for us to try and take into account as we think about change and the possible directions for change. So maybe we can you want to come back to that? We'll come back to that in the Q&A. Okay, great.
I'm happy to, as you prefer.
Yes, well, I'm just concerned to make sure we get through the whole panel, and then we'll move to a little Q&A period. So let's keep notes on that and move forward with the next panelist, Ms. Kim from OECD.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting the OECD and greetings from Paris. I would like to share maybe 3 initial thoughts with you. The first one is that even though we did not choose this pandemic, we can certainly choose how to get out of it. Of course, we are approaching 500,000 deaths from COVID-19 as we speak. Many more millions of people have lost, if not their life or their health, they lost their job, their house. And we estimate that GDP in OECD countries will drop by more than 7% this year in 2020, and even by more than 9% if there is a second wave of the virus. We did not choose any of this, but you can choose, we can collectively choose our future. Either go back to business as usual or get stronger out of this pandemic. And the policy choices that we make today to exit this crisis will shape the cities of tomorrow for decades to come, just like the choices we made over the past decades brought us where we are today. So what kind of cities do we have today, and what does it tell us about their capacity to meet the needs of tomorrow? My second message is that cities were both victims in a way and warriors also of this pandemic. Cities were certainly hit hard, and in a way they're health victims because in many countries the biggest hubs for the disease were in cities, not because of density, just like Sami just told us, but in Italy, for example, the region around Milan, Lombardy concentrates almost 40% of national cases. In Chile, metropolitan Santiago is 85%. Cities were also, in a way, economic victims because what made their strength until recently suddenly turned into a source of vulnerability. For example, tourism, which is projected to drop globally by 70% this year. Retail, trade, integration in global value chains, so many of these jobs are now at risk in cities. But cities have also proved to be warriors, meaning that they were on the front line of managing the crisis. They have served as a vehicle to distill locally the measures that were decided at national level. For example, by deploying municipal police to enforce lockdown, or closing public parks, as it was done in Paris, Milan, Lima, many others. They have also taken more bottom-up actions that only they could take because they have this unique proximity to citizens. And for instance, in some smaller cities, such as Angéville in France, for example, municipal staff called all senior citizens 3 times a week to check on their health at the beginning of the pandemic. And this is not something that a national government can do. Cities have been able to think forward for a more sustainable recovery, as can be seen in the recovery plans, I think, that are currently developed, by Sydney, Montreal, Amsterdam, Bogota, etc. And this takes me to my third and final message for now. I think building back better for tomorrow actually means accelerating the transitions that we already had to make yesterday before COVID-19 hit us. And this is not the job of national governments alone or of cities alone. The problems that we had before the crisis have not magically disappeared. It was only a temporary stay of execution, if you'd like. Take climate change, for example. In the previous panel, I think someone was mentioning how, of course, traffic bans have cleared the skies blue above the most polluted cities in the world, but it's only a matter of time until more people get back into their cars if we don't invest in the right kinds of mobility, which is, however, not possible for everyone. So we also need to rethink the need for mobility in the first place with the rise of teleworking, as we discussed just now, reforms in urban planning, maybe the 15-minute city concept that I think Professor Carlos Moreno might present in a minute. Let's remember that cities were already generating 2/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. Now is high time we reconsider the way we produce, the way we consume and move about in cities. And that we shift from this linear model towards a more circular model to reduce waste, to reuse resources, and restore ecosystems. We only have 10 years left until 2030 to achieve the SDGs, but we still have a long way to go. And actually, our numbers at the OECD show that at least 80% of regions and 70% of cities are not on track today. 65% of the SDG targets cannot be achieved without city and regional governments. National governments will not be able to get there alone. We have to go local. And what about inequalities? You know, cities were already segregated and fractured. There is an economic and social divide, a digital divide, many more, and the pandemic has revealed and sometimes exacerbated these divides, which can tear countries apart. So I will conclude with this call for action. We can choose to get our cities out of this crisis stronger for future crisis. Cities were certainly injured, but they proved they can innovate and reinvent themselves, and together with national governments, they can step up the necessary transitions, rethink urban planning, use green public procurement, support the digitalization of SMEs, etc. And this can contribute to a healthier and safer and fairer future for all. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the insights on how we might be better at doing what we're doing and learn from the lessons of the crisis. If I can turn then directly to Mr. Moreno, that you mentioned already, then perhaps we'll move to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I will share my screen for use. Okay, thank you for your kind invitation. Thank you to Sojane for quoting me about my work of cities of proximities, in particular, the concept of 15-minute city. Of course, I would like to share with you this popular concept, the 15 minutes concept, because today he's proposed, in fact, in Paris, and today this is very popular in different cities around the world. In fact, I want to share with you a very short video, 1 minute 15 seconds, for explain the concept in French and in English.
La ville du quart d'heure, c'est l'humain au Bouddha. C'est au cœur de la ville, mettre le cœur des hommes. C'est les services de proximité accessibles à tous, à moins d'un quart d'heure, à pied ou en vélo. C'est la nature, la biodiversité, tout près de nous. Des rues piétonnes, des rues végétalisées, moins de circulation. C'est les écoles ouvertes sur les quartiers. La ville des quarts d'heure, c'est un lieu, plusieurs usages. C'est quitter la mobilité subie pour aller vers la mobilité choisie. C'est dire bonjour à tout le monde. C'est des services qui permettent de rendre une ville apaisée. C'est pouvoir vivre plus librement dans la ville, profitant de son quartier. C'est la ville pour tous.
In fact, target is to increase the quality of life in cities. We need today to develop a new paradigm. A new paradigm because we needed to fight against climate change, pollution, overcrowding, and today the new crisis as COVID-19 pandemic crisis. The city of proximity, this is a new paradigm. The city of 15 minutes is our new capabilities for providing citizens all basic needs and services within 15-minute perimeter by foot, by bike, by low carbon mobilities. In fact, we want to offer the access of 6 essential urban social functions. in a short perimeter: to live, to work, to supply, to care, to learn, to enjoy. Because we consider that the most important point today is not to have smart cities, but to have happy citizens in a happy city for having a happy life. We needed to develop this concept for accessing the proximity of these 6 urban social functions because we wish to increase the quality of life for the well-being, my individual well-being, with my family, with my friends, my sociability in my district, myself, my neighbor, my work colleagues, and to increase the quality of life in a sustainable way, in a sustainable planet and in an inclusive planet. In fact, today, with this concept, with the 15-minute cities, several cities around the world wanted to implement this way. Of course, the city of Paris, this is the position of with Anne Hidalgo, the city of Nantes, the city of Mulhouse, or the city of Bordeaux, but around the world, many, many cities wanted to implement this way, in particular for developing this new paradigm in the post-COVID-19 pandemic crisis.
My apologies, but can you wrap up soon? We have a very tight agenda. I know that it's hard to present in such a short period of time, but I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. This is the end. Many cities today want to implement this concept, in particular for the new period post-COVID-19 in the pandemic crisis. The city of proximity, this is a new way for that.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciate that. It actually made me wonder, I don't know what the evidence is, but how long does it take to get across a village? What was the time allocation when people lived in villages? But I guess that's there must be a historical record on that. Just now then to turn to Mr. Wilmot, because we turned to an architect and urban planner. Jean-Michel, the floor is yours. I believe your microphone might be muted. There we go. Very good.
Okay. Do you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. So may I talk in French?
Yes, I think there's translation, indeed. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Donc,
certainement en français, sans problème. Je pense que ça va être...
You may speak French.
Je pense que nous vivons une époque assez exceptionnelle.
Will follow suit. We are going through quite exceptional time.
De réfléchir, de constater l'époque à laquelle on appartenait avant et d'imaginer l'époque à laquelle on pourrait appartenir après. Je pense que c'est passionnant de voir qu'en 2 mois, beaucoup de gens ont réfléchi et ont fait marcher leur imagination. Et on s'aperçoit qu'il y a énormément de possibilités de développement et de voir qu'il y a des choses essentielles. Les choses essentielles, c'est la vie, c'est l'espace public, c'est le bonheur, la joie de vivre. Je pense que c'est avant tout c'est ça, c'est cette joie de vivre. Et quand on parle de la ville, c'est une ville où on travaille, mais c'est une ville où on peut habiter aussi. Et habiter, il ne faut pas que ce soit une fonction ni une contrainte, que ce soit un bonheur.
A chore
Donc,
or a constraint or function. It has to be happiness as well. So we must organize life in order to be happy, to have happy lives. We have been building and not thinking sufficiently about the public realm. What's fascinating is what is happening today is the opening of such large pathways for this. Well-being is at the bottom of our buildings. It's inside our homes. We are currently building hallways and buildings where you can only go in and out. You have enough space for your mailboxes, your elevator, and that's it. No more public spaces. So that's one thing I wanted to say. Reinventing the public space is going to be absolutely essential. Think of transition spaces, how to establish transition between the city and the private space, the collective space and the private space.
Tampons qu'on va réinventer, et
Buffer
quand on va redessiner les
zones
appartements, on va créer ces espaces
should be
tampons.
reinvented
Qui
when
fait
designing
qu'on ne sera pas
buildings, when
projeté
designing
directement
apartments,
de la ville à son
having
appartement, mais qu'il y
transitions
aura des espaces de
that will allow
transition,
you not to
comme
be
on avait
thrown
autrefois dans les maisons
immediately from your
traditionnelles
apartment to
japonaises,
the
où on enlevait ses
city and vice
chaussures,
versa,
on changeait
but
d'habit
having a
et on
transition
rentrait dans
place,
la ville privée.
just like in traditional
Et ça,
Japanese homes, where
c'est
you would
un domaine qui va
have
vraiment
this
se
space
développer.
to remove your
Je pense
shoes
qu'il va y avoir besoin de plus de respect, bien sûr.
take the time to enter your home. This will
Penser à la
require
réversibilité.
respect. This
Je crois
will
qu'aujourd'hui, tous
require
les espaces
the idea of
publics qui vont être commandés aux architectes devraient avoir la
all
possibilité
public
d'être
realms that
réversibles.
will be
Imaginons,
requested from
demain,
architects should, from now on, be
construit un
changeable,
nouveau
be
stade,
reversible. Let's
un nouveau théâtre,
think
un
of,
nouveau
for
lieu
example,
d'exposition.
tomorrow
Il
building a
faudrait
new
que ces
stadium,
lieux
a new
puissent
concert hall,
transformer,
a
que du
new
jour au
museum.
lendemain, ça puisse
These
devenir
places should be
des lieux où on
transformable
peut rassembler
within
le
24
public
hours,
qui
a
est
place
en
that can become
transition, un public
hosting area for
qui est atteint par une maladie, par
people in transition, for
on peut
people
transformer
suffering
les
from a
espaces
disease,
par
so
ce
that
principe
these public
de
spaces can be
réversibilité, et que
transformed.
dans chaque ville, il y ait des stocks de
And there
lits,
should be a
de matériel
storage,
qui fait que du jour au
in each
lendemain,
city,
on
storage
transforme
of
ces
beds
espaces en
and
espaces d'accueil
material
entre
and
l'hôpital et
health
leur
equipment,
mise en forme.
so that
Donc
these
ça, c'est
places
une
can
chose.
be
Après, maintenant, on
transformed
va
overnight
utiliser des
into
matériaux. Il faut
healthcare
absolument
spaces.
qu'on
That's
utilise
one thing. And then
l'économie circulaire.
materials
Pourquoi
must
l'économie circulaire?
absolutely
Parce que les
rely on
matériaux
circular
ne
economy,
traversent plus
because materials are
ne
no
font plus des
longer
kilomètres et des centaines et des milliers de kilomètres
traveling
pour
around
arriver
the
sur
world through
l'endroit où ils sont
hundreds of thousands of kilometers between the place where they're extracted and the place
Ces
where they're being
matériaux, ils
used.
sont dans
Materials
l'environnement du
are
chantier.
now
Ce que j'appelle donc
to be found around the environment of the construction project, the construction site. This is what I call the circular economy, and this will be absolutely essential for development.
Une nouvelle idée qui pourrait être partagée par
Then something that we could
certains constructeurs,
consider, at least some designers and entrepreneurs. A few years ago,
c'est-à-dire que
something was
promoteur
invented,
mettait
the
1%
artistic 1%, meaning that your
son budget
a realtor would allocate 1% of their budget for artistic purposes. And then we should now create the 5% for joie de vivre, the 5% of budget allocated to happiness, well-being, meaning increasing the volume of public realm, improving the quality of life with plants, lights, gathering places with contemporary art. And this could include happiness, include well-being, and add it to the mere functional aspect of habitat. I'm sorry, Jean-Michel, but you can only speak for 4 minutes. Could you please conclude? Yes, this would be financed by complementary
donc il y a beaucoup de pistes aujourd'hui qui sont ouvertes
that could be offered to the realtors. So we have many opportunities, many pathways, and things to think about that could invent a new way of living, constructing, and a new way of being happy where you live. Thank you so much. Thank you for this intervention. I sincerely apologize for stopping all the speakers, but we are very limited in terms of the amount of time we have for each speaker. So let's move on without further ado to the next speaker, Mr. Zaccaroli. Benedetta Zaccaroli, the floor is yours.
Thank you to give me the floor. You're really, really kind. And thank you all. Thank you, Unesco, to organize this meeting. And thank you, the participants. So I'll try to stay in the 4 minutes. It's not, so it's the new normal. We can define like this. So hearing the speakers before me, one thing is clear. So what we call normality in the pre-COVID era could not be synonymous with social justice. The pandemic showed how unfair the world was, and it is, and that today we cannot afford to return to that normality. In the coming years, I think local communities must equip themselves with clear and shared priorities based on human rights. A good way, I think, are the SDGs that the United Nations system are formulated and proposed as a path toward 2030. They are still valid more than before. Social justice is not created casually, but needs to be pursued day after day with clear administrative decisions from the local to the international level, passing through national governments. The first priority in the post-COVID era cannot fail to be the cultural one in the cities, which can no longer be considered only service providers, but common cultural terrain. To do this, we have to go back to the squares, like the people is doing also in this pandemic moment, struggling for the human rights, for equal opportunities. The movement Black Lives Matter all around the world is really brave and tackling also a pandemic moment. They go to the square. Why the international organization? Why the local communities, the administrative communities, the town, the nation, they don't go to the squares? Why? We have to change this paradigm. We cannot anymore wait for the citizens come to our offices. We have to reach them where they are, to build together the common ground on human rights based. Is the only way now for me. If everything has to change, we must start from the fact that really we cannot wait for the citizens in our offices, but go toward them. All this is to be done together with civil society. We can think of not changing. We cannot think about that. UNESCO, with its cities networks, can be a magnificent aggregator of ideas, projects, solutions, but it needs it has to change. Nobody can go back to doing his job as he did before. This meeting, even if online, has a great value. The different city networks address the individual aspect of local life, and only by putting them together can we be effective. Also UNESCO, also the United Nations systems has to change the perspective. I don't know, Mrs. Linda Tinio, with whom I work at UNESCO with the ICAR network, cannot think to come back at their work like before. Everything is changed. Let's not hide, however, that to do this, we need resources. And as local communities are rethinking them, so all actors must rethink their priorities and act accordingly. Thanks for the attention. I don't want to be longer.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your intervention. It makes me, in the previous discussion, the last session, this one, the idea that we should organize the world differently and try and think of how we might organize work for life instead of life for work, and provoking the question that I think that you raised, which is, aren't we, in a sense, through the virtual world and the fact that we can disassemble the conglomerations and we can go one-to-one and we can social network directly through telepresence and being virtually present all over the world at any time, creating the conditions to reorganize, to create village life in which the purpose of life is life, rather than organizing where we are for work. It just seems to me that this is exactly a provocation for our imaginations. But I know that we'll explore this again further, and I'd like to ask Ms. James to take the floor, please. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you very much for inviting me to talk today. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to try and talk about. Can you see that?
Yes, it's through now. We can see it.
Can you see it? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about Swansea Learning City in Wales in the UK. And I want to use it as an example of perhaps what can be done. Swansea gained the UNESCO Learning City Award in 2015 with the ambition to be innovative, entrepreneurial, and inclusive. And these ambitions are really clearly demonstrated in the city's response to the pandemic. Swansea happens to be a great place to live with a fantastic natural environment, coast, countryside, and mountains, and people are happy here. It's said that when you come to Swansea to live, you never want to leave. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about the context. Wales has a devolved government, and the most important legislation made by the Welsh Government is the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which gives us the ambition, permission, and legal obligation to improve our social, cultural, environmental, and economic well-being. So this leads Wales and the Welsh to meet the SDGs. It's our roadmap. But we cannot examine one global challenge in isolation. We need to address the pandemic, climate emergency, and social inequality together by being innovative, entrepreneurial, and inclusive. We know that already thousands of people have lost their jobs, and we need to address the economy. And Swansea works regionally as Swansea Bay City Region to regenerate the economy. Already, public spaces and the city centre are being repurposed from primarily retail to meet the new needs of the population, with a green and digital infrastructure, heritage-based spaces and creative spaces for living, work and leisure. We have university high-quality research, which creates innovation. And led by the City and County of Swansea, we've got collaborative partnership in action, public, private and people, in our response to the pandemic, and this will be maintained going forward. I want to go to the next slide, but nothing's happening. Hang on. So we've developed an entrepreneurship ecosystem, making sure that there's entrepreneurial learning throughout the whole of our education system, primary, secondary, further, higher, lifelong learning. The idea of this is that people should think outside the box and be able to respond to unforeseen circumstances. And this has really been demonstrated very clearly in the pandemic. We also provide support, investment and spaces suitable for new enterprises and to enable business growth. If you put together innovation and entrepreneurial people, you attract investment. We have a 1.3 billion city deal that's based on sustainable initiatives. So we're changing from a heavy industry region to a region where our focus is all about sustainability. The initiatives are about marine renewables, digital infrastructure, steel decarbonisation, creative industries, retrofitting and new build homes as power stations, AI, robotics, big data, next generation services, health and well-being, campuses and village, and skills and talent to underpin all the developments. We aim to make 10,000 highly skilled jobs, and this is really important because having a job is the best way out of poverty. And we're working really hard to be inclusive. And some solutions to hardships were found during the pandemic. The homeless were provided with homes. Children and families in need were provided with food and with money. And that showed us the potential for a more caring and more equal society. But there's more to do. When we improve the economy, we need to think about the purpose of this improvement. It is not to increase the gap between rich and poor. That's the real social distancing. Our purpose is to enable society to invest in the well-being of future generations and address education, health, and social inequalities. We have the potential. We've got the research, innovation, investment, and the will to create an inclusive future. But our future happiness lies in listening to, understanding, and meeting the needs of people. And we will learn together to make that happen. We're members of the UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities, and are grateful for the support, collaboration and joint learning within this UNESCO network. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Sorry again to put pressure on everyone to keep their remarks concise, but we have very very little time. One of the things that strikes me here again is that the way we determine what's inside the box is often a challenge, and what's outside the box. And I guess you know, having worked for many years in this field as a futurist, the question of the future of work comes up cyclically, perennially, every decade, more or less, or even less. And I often ask the question, why do we want to sustain and maintain a jobs approach to the world? I know that we don't have time to really dive into this, but one of the ways that we create the boxes and the limits to our thinking and our imaginations is that we imagine certain categories of activity, let's say companies, corporations, continuing into the future. And it's of course very difficult to imagine otherwise, but hopefully that's one of the conclusions coming out of these sessions, is that we need to pursue ways of challenging our imaginations even further. And that leads me to our final speaker, Ms. Mugada from Beyond the Lines. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak today. I'll just highlight what I feel would be effective in building sustainable cities, especially in regards to young people. Cities have always provided a platform for young people to follow their dreams, as this is where a lot of urbanization is taking place, a lot of opportunities. And with the pandemic, it has become evident that it's not sustainable to live in cities as it is, because of the housing situation, the lack of access to public health, and of course unemployment. For many young people, the pandemic is just one of the injustices that they continue to face. And so this has really deepened the situation that existed before. And moving forward, it is important that cities and local leaders invest in young people's skills and resources and provide them with opportunities where they could advance their expertise. For instance, young people have been at the front line of responding to COVID-19 in their towns without any technical skills or knowledge. They've also been at the front line as doctors in other situations. Secondly, enhancing the participation of young people in political processes, in decision-making processes at the local government level is very important, because as it is, young leaders are leading today and will lead tomorrow, and we need to be involved in the decision-making processes from today moving forward, so that we know and are involved in the kind of cities that we would like to live in. And this calls for a more inclusive setup in terms of the mechanisms that have been put in place to make key decisions in cities. Most importantly and finally, I think that human rights is key in the development and sustainability of any city. And as it stands, young people are at risk because their rights continue to be violated, either by state or even non-state actors. And the health pandemic has further exposed these injustices and the state of human rights for many young people all over the world. And so it would be ideal to see that there is prioritization of young people at the decision-making level across all levels, and also just so that we can be part and parcel of everything that's going on. So decisions are not made for us, but are made with us. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank you very much. I realize that we're over time already. I appreciate it. And I just thought maybe 1 minute, and I know that Sama has to leave, but if we just do 1 minute reply for each person and go around the entire list, just 1 minute each, okay?
Thank you, Riel. Very quickly, I just wanted to make the point on the 15-minute city. I mean, it's being introduced as, if you will, the post-COVID-19 innovation. And at the end of the day, it really is a return in time to an age-old planning concept, which is the neighborhood unit. You know, I mean, that's basically the plan for the city of Radburn, 1929, Clarence Stein, Henry Wright, Clarence Perry. So, I mean, the whole point was that all the services that you need as a household, you know, that lives in a community are available in your neighborhood. It's the primary school, it's the shops, it's the health center, public spaces, the house of worship, what have you, and that the commuting is based on cycling, on walking, etc. And then if you need something beyond that within a city, a university, museum, etc., this is when you commute a little bit past that. So, I mean, it's a very welcome return to the future. It's also, you know, one of those basic foundations that are going to get us to thinking of making the recovery not just towards a healthier city, but towards a greener city. Because at the end of the day, if we miss the opportunity of transforming this huge amount of stimulus funding that's going into retrofitting public space, adjusting the cities, etc., and we miss the opportunity to make it about, you know, low carbon, resilient investments for a climate smart future, then we will have missed a major opportunity to put our world back on track for the 1.5 degree world.
Thank you so much for your intervention and for your contributions. If we can pass now to Ms. Kim. Just 1 minute though, please.
Okay. Thank you so much. I've actually always lived in cities, and not any kind of cities, but always mega cities, you know, Paris and Seoul. So basically 12 and maybe more than 20 million people, respectively. So I think, you know, over the next decades, I will probably still be living in a city, but according to OECD data, you know, more than half of the world population will live in cities by 2050. And if the trajectory from the past decades continues, we'll see those cities continuing to become more and more dense. And in fact, 2/3 of city growth so far has been explained by densification rather than spatial expansion. So I think better managing this density and combining the advantages of being in a city without all the drawbacks that we've known so far is absolutely critical. I think today we have the tools to make this happen with all the smart city tools, you know, digital proximity, but also the tools that we can use to make cities more green and inclusive and safe, as safe as possible. And also shifting from this logic of mobility towards more accessibility and allowing people to choose and prioritize their daily trips will really help us build a better planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I turn now to Mr. Moreno? 1 minute, please.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I agree with Sami Waba because the concept of the 15-minute cities in general, the economic urbanism, this is a concept worked by an international community of researchers, including me, for 70 years. In particular, in the USA, the activist Jane Jacobs has been developing the concept of living city. This is the concept of the city is a live organism with the possibility for developing a new metabolism based on how could we use better time. We need today to reconquer the time, the useful time, because in fact we lost the time. We need today to reconquer the time for the quality of life, not only for working, not only for living. We needed to reconquer the quality of life for having a happy life in a happy city with happy citizens. Today, with the concept of the 15-minute city, we have this idea to reconquer the time, to reconquer the basic needs, and to develop the new actions against climate change, pollution, and a healthy city. Our enemy continue to be climate change. Don't forget. This is very important to reach the carbon neutrality at the horizon 2050. The 15-minute city is one step for reaching this target, carbon neutrality, and survive at the end of this century of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Monsieur Wilmot? Monsieur Winmat? No? I don't, maybe your microphone is muted. Hello? Perhaps the connection has been lost, which would be a pity. Sorry about that. But how about Mr. Zaccaroli?
So just to be really quick, I think that's all the ideas, the 15 minutes city is really, really interesting. But also some idea that came during the other debate, like from Mexico City or Bogota or other speakers, we need all, I represent a global network led by UNESCO, but we need a director that give us a direction just to wrap up all these ideas and to propose to national government and so on, stressing that the reality are really, really, really different, and having in mind all the flow of people searching new cities so they are refugees, they are migrants, the climate change migrants and so on. We cannot forget that part of humanity that is really the last, let me say, not least, but the last part of humanity. There were a Catholic bishop here in Italy that was used to say, if you start from the last, you can take everybody. So try to start from that point and go in the direction and move together. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Ms. James?
I really like the idea suggested about many communities, like lots of villages joined together, each different, but all caring for their communities, because I think this is something that's really come out in the pandemic, that the community response has been amazing, but they need to be joined up, and there needs to be greater tolerance of difference and understanding that, you know, they're all part of the same city, and if they all thrive together, then the whole city will thrive instead of fighting each other.
Thank you very much. And so we turn lastly to Ms. Mugada. Quick comment in closing.
Just in closing is to say that resilient and sustainable cities also highly depend on the level of preparedness of the cities and its people to respond to crisis. And no one was really ready for this pandemic. And this shows that, you know, beyond this, if there's any lesson that we need to take, is that we need to be more prepared with our systems and structures to be able to face a similar or even worse crisis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just, in closing, let me say, one of the things that's also underscored by the pandemic is that we incrementally, decision by decision, good, planning by good planning choice, created tremendous vulnerability. And the uniformity of the images of urbanization that have dominated the world for the last more than a century, perhaps are one of the sources of a form of globalization that leaves us very brittle and fragile because it's in fact not well connected to the nature of difference in the world around us and our organic connection as part of the world today. So I do indeed think that this session, which attempts to think about the future, underscores that it's not easy to imagine the future, and that exercises that do imagine the future, that can be aware of how past images constrain the way we imagine the future, would be very worth undertaking, particularly since the imperatives of being imaginative and innovative and recognizing, as was discussed in the previous session, the oppression, the exploitation, and the suffering that is currently the normal for the vast majority, is something that leaves us, I think, with a moral imperative to imagine something fundamentally different. So with that, I want to thank all the panelists. It's been a very interesting session and a significant contribution to the work that UNESCO is doing in this field. And I'll turn the stage back over to Denise. Thank you very much.
Many thanks to all for this vibrant discussion on the future of cities. We will now begin with our final special session on transformative city tourism. And I would like to invite the speakers and Ms. Mechtilde Rössler, Director of the World Heritage Center of UNESCO, to moderate this session. Mechtilde, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Denise. And on behalf of UNESCO, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you for this special session on transformative city tourism. The pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic has had an unprecedented impact on travel, on tourism, as we all know. Last year, over 1.5 billion people crossed international borders, and tourism was increasingly a major source of growth, employment, and income around the world. This year, the World Tourism Organization, UNWTO, is forecasting a 60 to 80% decrease, and this was already mentioned in some of the previous panels, a decrease in international travel due to COVID-19. Millions of jobs are being lost every day, and up to 120 million are under immediate threat. Cities have been particularly hit hard, and only time will tell the full extent of the impact. Nonetheless, the crisis seems to be an important turning point to reflect on the type of future we want to have for tourism, a future where culture and heritage are the defining values and the diverse urban communities are strengthened. I'm delighted to be joined today by an excellent panel of mayors, officials, and experts who will share their insight and experiences from around the world. So please let us start the session with a 4-minute short presentation by each of the panelists, which will be followed by Q&A. Without further delay, I would like to welcome our first speaker, Mr. Manuel Butler, the Executive Director of the World Tourism Organization. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rössler. I thank you very much, first of all, for giving us, WTO, the opportunity to share with you this important forum, these important reflections about tourism, about cities. I will share with you a presentation. Here it is. Thank you again. As you say, the currently crisis has hit in a very worst way the cities, but as well the tourism. The tourism is a unique and unprecedented situation that we are living now. In over 30 years, they are working in the tourism. I couldn't imagine that we got in many countries, for example, in the month of April, 0 international tourist arrivals. The situation is very dramatic, but the situation has improved in the latest 3 weeks. Coming to the forecast that, or the scenarios, not a forecast, that's the 3 scenarios that we produce in order to give some guidance to the countries and to all the tourist ecosystem about what is happening and what is sailing the tourism in this uncharted waters during this crisis. We, as you have mentioned at the beginning, we have considered 3 scenarios coming to a decrease in the best case scenario for the whole year, for the whole current year 2020, minus 58% of the demand, and in the worst case, minus 78% of the demand. But depending on an indicator, the indicator that's, of course, is the health situation, that there is a medication, but we are linking with the travel restrictions in each country in this, and we are approaching now in the international arena in the best case scenario. That means that we are having, we are approaching to this best case scenario. The other thing that's highly relevant, the jobs at risk that you have mentioned, but it's highly relevant that seeing that we have to have an eye looking for the short term, but the other eye is looking for the long term. And we have experience, we have seeing that the mega trends, they are already there. They have experience and accelerate transformation. Coming to the recommendation that we have worked at the very beginning on the priorities for the tourism recovery, and the first one that was the survival of the sector as itself, protecting jobs, providing liquidity, and of course the second, that's the currency. The current currency is the trust, confidence, and recover confidence through safety and security. Of course, we are coming as well, and a network logic that was already there, but this network logic is consolidated through this public-private collaboration for an efficient reopening of the industry. It's something that will mark tremendously the coming decade. Open board responsibility, we are now seeing what is happening in Europe. There are good news, harmonize and coordinate protocols and procedures. That the only way in order to give to a global problem and a global response, what at the beginning of the current crisis it was not the case, and the response of the sector that has reacted as a united voice for the month of March, and we have produced in the committee crisis, we have called for occasion some frame protocols and procedures, and we are very happy with it. And of course, coming seeing for the future, add value jobs through new technologies and innovation and sustainability as the new normal. Innovation and sustainability will be key, and they are already key. We have to not forget that at the end of the 2019 year, we have the COP25 about the climate action, the climate emergency, and we have moving forward to this concept. But of course, what has arisen with the COVID crisis, that the social sustainability is key. That's coming to the recommendations that we are doing on the urban tourism. They are more relevant than ever. We are saying that for in the latest year, that of course tourism should be must be a part of the urban agenda. It couldn't be not anymore a silo department of the urban agenda. That the innovative experience should be tremendously pushed forward with the creative industries to bring value to the communities and disperse the demand. You remember what is happening in the latest years in some hot spots, that with the demand of tourism that has exceeded the capacity of these hot spots. The technology, of course, should be better for planning and management, but the most important for us is in the current today and for the demands to come ahead. That's the new governance, to have all the stakeholders under same umbrella working together in this network logic that I have mentioned previously. That means the public, the private, and the local community. They have to come and to work on the same direction. I consumed my time. I tried to be very brief, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. This was very interesting. Without further delay, I would like to invite Mrs. Suvan Supana, the mayor of Phuket in Thailand, to share her presentation with us, please.
ก็สวัสดีนะคะก็อยากจะนำเรียนว่าเหตุการณ์ของโควิด -19 สำหรับภูเก็ตนั้นในอดีตนั้นเรามีนักท่องเที่ยวมากกว่า12ล้านคนต่อปีค่ะแล้วก็เรามีรายได้จากอุตสาหกรรมการท่องเที่ยวไม่น้อยกว่า 12,500 ล้าน US ดอลลาร์นะคะในปีคศ 2016 ค่ะ เศรษฐกิจของเมืองก็ถือว่าอยู่ในระดับดีแล้วก็มีการจ้างงานของคนทั้งในพื้นที่แล้วก็ต่างจังหวัดรวมถึงนักท่องเที่ยวชาวต่างชาติที่มาประกอบธุรกิจในภูเก็ตแม้ว่าเราจะมีรายได้ที่เกิดขึ้นจากการท่องเที่ยวมากแต่เราก็มีปัญหาในเรื่องของสิ่งแวดล้อมไม่ว่าขยะน้ำเสียนะคะในเรื่องของน้ำก็มี3ด้านคือน้ำอุปโภคบริโภคแล้วก็น้ำเสียแล้วก็ในส่วนหนึ่งของน้ำท่วมนะคะฉะนั้นเราก็ต้องใช้เงินในส่วนหนึ่งในจำนวนมากในการไปแก้ปัญหาในเหล่านี้ค่ะแต่เมื่อเกิดของโรคระบาดโควิด -19 นะคะธุรกิจของอุตสาหกรรมการท่องเที่ยวได้รับผลกระทบอย่างมากนะคะทั้งต้นน้ำกลางน้ำและปลายน้ำเพราะว่าเราจะเป็นธุรกิจที่เกี่ยวกับโรงแรมนะคะบริการในเรื่องของอาหารนะคะฉะนั้นทุกส่วนก็เกี่ยวข้องเมื่อมีการปิดกิจการนะคะในการหยุดก็จะทำให้เกิดการว่างงานนะคะรายได้ก็หายไปนะคะซึ่งเราประมาณว่าเมื่อเดือนกุมภาพันธ์ที่ผ่านมาถึงสิงหาคมค่ะภูเก็ตจะขาดรายได้ของการท่องเที่ยวประมาณ 4,000 ล้าน US ดอลลาร์นะคะอันนี้คือเพียงแค่หมุน1รอบแต่ถามว่าแนวทางในการพัฒนาต่อไปก็คือเราก็คงที่จะกลับมาหันมามองว่าเราจะเป็นการท่องเที่ยวในเชิงคุณภาพมากกว่าปริมาณนี่คือการแลกเปลี่ยนความคิดเห็นระหว่างผู้ประกอบการภาครัฐนะคะจากการที่จังหวัดภูเก็ตนะคะที่เรามีผู้ติดเชื้อโควิดนะคะเป็นที่2ของประเทศไทยแต่เราก็สามารถที่จะบริหารในเชิงพื้นที่สามารถให้รักษาให้ทุกคนปลอดภัยนะคะปัจจุบันนะคะเราไม่มีผู้ติดเชื้อโควิดเป็นวันที่31นะคะอันนี้เราอยู่ในระยะผ่อนผันที่4นั่นก็หมายความว่าสิ่งที่ก็มีการว่าประเทศไทยได้ถูกประกาศว่าเป็นประเทศที่2มีระบบสาธารณสุขที่ดีนี้ก็ถือว่าเป็นความน่าเชื่อถือของระบบของสาธารณสุขแล้วบวกกับความจุดแข็งของคนไทยที่มีจิตบริการแล้วก็มีความเอื้ออาทรฉะนั้นในเรื่องของการท่องเที่ยวในอนาคตของเราก็จะแบ่งในระยะสั้นก็คือ1ก็คือในเรื่องของการกระตุ้นของการท่องเที่ยวของคนไทยเป็นหลักโดยอาศัยแคมเปญของรัฐบาลในการช่วยอันที่2ก็คือในเรื่องของการจับคู่ของเมืองท่องเที่ยว Travel Bubble ค่ะนะคะในระยะยาวก็คือในเรื่องของการฟื้นฟูท่องเที่ยวโดยใช้ทุนทางวัฒนธรรมบวกกับจุดแข็งนั่นคือการท่องเที่ยวในเชิงสุขภาพการท่องเที่ยวในเชิงวิถีชุมชนการท่องเที่ยวในเชิงนิเวศรวมถึงในเรื่องของการขายในเรื่องวัฒนธรรมในเรื่องของแกสโซมีโดยการให้ความสำคัญในเรื่องของมาตรฐานของความสะอาดถูกสุขลักษณะแล้วก็ความปลอดภัยเพื่อสร้างความจุดแข็งให้เกิดความมั่นใจคนในพื้นที่แล้วก็นักท่องเที่ยวที่มาเที่ยวแล้วก็กลับไปอย่างมีความสุขนะคะเราก็จะต้องใช้มาตรการ SOP ในตลอดทุกกิจกรรมที่เรามีการผ่อนปลนและการเปิดโอกาสจนกว่าที่จะมีวัคซีนที่จะมาช่วยในการทำให้เรามีภูมิต้านทานค่ะ
Good evening. Before the COVID-19, Phuket welcomed 12 million tourists every year, helping to generate over 12.5 billion US dollar and a wider employment among the local and international labor. However, there were negative sides of tourism as well, as we had to deal with many environmental problems and waste problems, demanding a huge budget to handle the situation. As a result of the pandemic COVID-19, all businesses in tourism supply chain, from the upper, middle, and downstream, have been seriously affected with estimated loss of 4 billion US dollar just in 7 months between February to August 2020. Many businesses have been shut down with zero revenue and a sharp increase of unemployment. Having the second highest number of infected cases in Thailand, Phuket has successfully managed to maintain zero new cases for 31 days consecutively, and we are now in the 4th phase of reopening the city. And all patients have returned home healthy and completely cured. This boosts up a stronger confidence in national health system and reinforce the reputation of Thai hospitality extended to each other during this difficult time. In the short term, there are government measures and campaigns to stimulate tourism from domestic market and certain countries in the travel bubble arrangement. In the longer term, we pay stronger emphasis on promoting high quality and high yield tourism market, including medical and wellness tourism, gastronomy tourism, eco-tourism, and community-based tourism. Lifting up hygiene standards of our services in hospitality and tourism businesses are our priority, as new standard operating procedure or SOP are being drawn up and implemented in all sectors. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the report from Phuket. Very much appreciated. I would like to welcome Mrs. Amandina Salero, the Vice President of Barcelos Municipality from Portugal, to make your statement, please.
Merci. Bon après-midi à toutes les participants. Je suis ici pour représenter la ville de Barcelos.
Good afternoon to you all. I'm here to represent the community of Barcelos. Barcelos is a creative city in the area of arts and crafts. It was recognized as a sustainable cultural destination of Europe, recognized as such in 2019 by the EU. We are part of the Creative Tourism Network. It's in Barcelos, tourism is highly dependent on craftsmanship, which is incorporated in our development strategy. Also, we want creativity to be one of the drivers of sustainable urban development. 3, urban regeneration should rely on principles of sustainability and the promotion of creativity as a factor of urban development and promotion of creative arts. Also, we want more diversity in creativity and a greater proportion of traditional arts. So we have a number of recommendations to foster the survival of the sector and also foster urban creativity. Number 1, support to the artisan community, artisans that live solely from revenue of their art and have no other source of revenue. In this respect, our municipality has commissioned 1 piece from every registered artist. Secondly, we want to provide support to the artisanal community and other creative artists, since we feel that their sector is absolutely vital in the promotion of creative cities. Thirdly, we want to put in an incentive system. Barcelos wants to provide support to artisans to take part in trade fairs. Then we also want to work with the artisans community in order to promote the recovery of creative tourism in cities, urban creative tourism. We want to bolster trust and also ensure a proper health protocol concerning strategy for our city and urban tourism in the future. We feel that the development paradigm should be refocused depending on cities' priorities and should be related to the abilities and resources of each community. And we must also respect local specificities. And so we think that arts and crafts can really differentiate communities and be the drivers of sustainable tourism, higher quality and healthier tourism.
It is important to consider that city is a place where indeed inhabitants and their well-being are at the forefront.
Creative stakeholders must never only depend on visitors. They have to find other channels for distribution and promotion. In Barcelos, we want to design a town that creates a happy community and that is also creative and safe and that will attract tourists interested in the distinctive features of creative tourism. So in our association, that is the strategy we have designed. And I've been delighted to have this opportunity to share this with you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Ms. Salero.
And I would like now to invite Mrs. Betty Adero-Radier, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Tourism Board, to take the floor, please.
Thank you, and good evening to everybody. The situation for Nairobi, Kenya, which is a city in East African region of Africa. Basically, what's happened since COVID is I wouldn't talk about the city, which is Nairobi, which is the capital city that has a population of about 9 million, but I'll talk about the entire country. We are still in what we would be considering as the early stages of the pandemic, as we are currently just over the 5,000 mark of infections, and that is still rising. So currently the city is still, or the country is still in lockdown. We have cessation of movement across different towns. But what has happened in that period is we've had an opportunity to be able to build in protocols and provide outlines around this protocol that would help in terms of the recovery phase as relates to operations, especially for the tourism industry, ensuring that we build capacity around hospitality providers, put in place ways that we can implement enabling policies, but more importantly, to be able to shield the small and medium-sized businesses in terms of a stimulus material, tax breaks, and also opportunities to be able to access financing at rate concessions. As relates to the activities that we're doing as a country, we've largely dealing with that section of making sure that we are watching against the rise of the pandemic, but from a tourism perspective, we've put in place strategies that will allow us to have a situation where we reset basically the tourism industry, focusing largely on domestic as a level 1 engagement, even as the markets open. Once we have a relief on the cessation of movement and opening of our airspace, that will help encourage the domestic travel around the country. We have opportunities available for tourism around our conservancies, around the coastal region, around which is in our town in Mombasa. We have a lake town that borders the various neighbors, which is Rwanda and Uganda, which is Kisumu, which provides an amazing opportunity for tourism there. And then we also have the highlands, which is in the Mount Kenya region. And that tourism, we are largely going to concentrate on domestic tourism. There's a lot of communication and use of the digital space, which has seen almost a 70% increase in engagement from different travelers, but also has provided an opportunity for us to be able to live stream safaris within the destination that allow the citizenry and the globe and possible travelers in the globe to be able to have an experience, a virtual experience of what is available once we are able to travel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Radier, because that was really interesting from the perspective from Kenya. And I would like now to invite Mrs. Maria Helena de Sena Fernandez to take the floor, please. She's the director of the Macau Government Tourism Office, so it's very interesting to hear from you, please.
Oops. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, and can you see my screen now?
Absolutely, no problem.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, just now, our friend from the UNWTO has already shared, the general picture. So now focusing on Macau itself, the picture actually reacts or reflects a lot, very, very much similar situation, to the world situation. We, until May, as you can see, our visitor arrivals has dropped about 81%. Overnight visitors also dropped about 80%. And we were able to have like 3 million people up to May because of a very good January. But then as from January onwards, a lot of, with the COVID-19 situation, the borders were literally almost completely closed, apart from some selective people who can now cross the borders without having to be subjected to a 14-day quarantine period. So as we can see, tourism situation has, and for a city which relies very much on tourism, I would say that, the situation is a very, very completely different from what we used to be experiencing. We used to have, just to share, we used to have about 3 million visitors a month. So I guess we are now, and now we're experiencing almost the best day when we have tourists now is about 1,000 people a day. The lowest we can have is about 200 people crossing the borders into Macau every day. And hotel occupancies now, the worst that I have seen so far is roughly about 5 to 6% of a single digit occupancy in terms of our hotels. So yes, the situation is difficult, but I think that we are, in difficult situations, we have to use our creativity, we have to resort to resilience. And I think that the tourism sector now in Macau, they have actually done quite well so far. And we've stuck together, and then we're trying to do all sorts of different things. In terms of short-term measures, of course, the government has come up with tourism related taxation subsidies. We've given, we've waived tourist tax, we've waived a lot of other taxation or I would say inspection fees for all sorts of, not just hotels, but all businesses within the tourism sector. And then whilst we are in a period of very, very slow demand at this point in time, we have actually used our timing and given the small and medium enterprises, particularly those in the entertainment sector in Macau, to produce different kinds of promotional videos to prepare ourselves when people start coming in. There is a new perspective to Macau. So we're giving the opportunity right now to the local SMEs, to produce promotional material for Macau. And then just whilst we are speaking, we have just also launched what we call a Macau Ready Go e-platform, meaning to say that Macau is ready to receive tourists or to serve our tourists again. So we're already preparing the platform with a lot of very good offers, when people are able to come back. When there is a crisis, there is always, a way to use our creativity. So we have just also this week launched what we call the local tours. The tourism community now is, we don't have tourists to serve. So now we're using all our efforts to serve our local population. We're encouraging the local population, since now we don't need to be in lockdown. We're encouraging the locals to rediscover Macau itself. So we're designing new tours. And if these tours become successful, we would be planning to use them when tourists come back as new kinds of tours, new creative tours for different peoples who come in. So when they come in, we will be able to then offer new complementary tours for them to see Macau in a different light. And obviously, we're looking at other kinds of assistance to the sector as well. All in all, I would say, like to share with everybody is that, we believe that tourism will not be what it used to be. And so that's why, I guess, we have to stick together and we have to prepare ourselves for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this report on Macau. And now our last speaker is Mrs. Ang Mingji, who is the General Manager of Georgetown World Heritage. So please, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
All right, I'll start. Okay, I'm a World Heritage Site Manager. I'm from Georgetown, Malaysia. The good news is Georgetown is now free from COVID active case for more than 53 days now. I think this status is very important to ensure the safety and confidence of the returning tourists. We start to see domestic tourists coming back to the site now, slowly but gradually. One thing that I would like to highlight over here is like any post-COVID tourism recovery plan not only will promote destination packages of activities, waiver for hotel, tax reduction, but it is also very important to promote the products, services provided by the local communities. This is our chance because local communities are included our tour guide, hotel workers, Grab drivers, eateries, cultural heritage practitioners, and our traditional performers, artisans, creative industry professionals, and many more. I'm here to highlight that, these local communities are the capital and the frontliners in the tourism industry. Many of them has lost income since January 2020. And I really think that, every one of us should be willing to invest resources to help them to overcome the difficulties that they are facing now. In particular, in Georgetown, I would like to share that our social and economic mitigation recovery strategies put high consideration to sustain and continue the livelihood of them, in particular to empower. What do you mean by empowerment? For example, basic skill for digital marketing, help them to be more techno-savvy so that they can share their products and their services with more people at these opportunities. I think we have to take the extra miles to listen to them, speak in a language that they can understand, use a term that the grassroots are willing to accept our offers. And we have to be empathize of the needs of the local people so that they can be part of the recovery and they will be able to share the sustainability that we will be having after the post-COVID situations. I will not say more. I look forward for Q&A. I will say that, we will do our best in Georgetown, and I also wish the best of luck for the other city as well. Thank you, and merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much for the report on Georgetown, and I would like to thank all our panelists for the excellent presentations and the discussions, and you highlighted a number of really significant challenges cities are now facing to deal with the crisis, and you shared some of the innovative responses you are testing out. Now we come to the questions and answer part, and now building on the examples of today, the question is, how can cities work to recover tourism and support a stronger and more resilient community while balancing the needs and interests of visitors and residents? And then we got also in the chat a question which is somehow related, because there was already a discussion today on what is the new normal. So the question is, what do you expect to be the new normal of sightseeing and trips? So maybe you can combine that, and I make another round. Please, maybe you can answer this question in 1 minute. Should we start with Mr. Butler? I don't think the panel is really gender balanced, so Mr. Butler, you are the only man. You start, please.
Okay. Yeah, and gender minority. No, thank you very much. Okay, the new normal, as I have pointed out, that will be mainly according with the innovation and sustainability, but we don't have a crystal ball. Yeah, that's very difficult. Yeah, today to say how will be the people travel in the coming years. We think, despite of that there will not big changes. That the interest of the people to travel will be there. Yeah, will we take a couple of years until we reach again the high level that we have reached 1,500 million international arrivals last year, but will take 3 2-3 years at least, and resilience and sustainability in tourism is key. And we take the case of the Europe. Half of the trips, the international trips, they are short trips, mainly to city trips. So the cities, they are a main pillar to the international tourism. As I have pointed out previously, coming together in this network logic with all the stakeholders to integrate the local population, that's tremendously important. Was important previously, but now it's more important as before. Then all these crises arise, the importance of the social sustainability and all these actions that are going, and we have here now with Macau, with Georgetown, with Kenya and so forth, they're in the right direction in order to achieve this more sustainable destination, more sustainable cities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Butler. Also reacting to some of the things you have heard from your from the other panelists. Could I please call on Mrs. Suvan Supana to give her point of view?
ก็ในเรื่องของการเหตุการณ์ที่เกิดโควิด -19 นะคะในครั้งนี้ทำให้ภูเก็ตนั้นเรียนรู้ในเรื่องของบทเรียนที่มีมากมายนะคะซึ่งในเมื่อเทียบกับการเกิดภัยของธรรมชาติสึนามิในปีคศ 2004 ค่ะแล้วก็โดยของโควิด -19 ในคราวนี้เป็นเรื่องของสาธารณสุขซึ่งมีแตกต่างจากภัยธรรมชาตินอกจากเวลาของในเรื่องของเศรษฐกิจมีความลำบากมีความยาวมากขึ้นแล้วเราไม่รู้ว่ามันจะสิ้นสุดในช่วงไหนซึ่งมันอาจจะมีจนกว่าที่จะมีวัคซีนมาป้องกันนะคะฉะนั้นในอย่างที่ได้นำเรียนว่าก่อนเกิดการระบาดเรามีนักท่องเที่ยวที่มากแต่หลังจากที่มีล็อกดาวน์นั้นก็ทำให้เศรษฐกิจของเรานี่แย่นะคะแล้วก็เราก็พบว่าแต่สิ่งที่มันเป็นโอกาสก็คือธรรมชาตินะคะฟื้นฟูกับให้เรามีความงดงามนะคะแล้วก็ปัญหาของสิ่งแวดล้อมน้อยลงฉะนั้นสิ่งที่เราต้องกลับมาในพิจารณาในเรื่องของความสามารถในการคิดในลักษณะของวิถีใหม่ของการท่องเที่ยวก็คือเมื่อก่อนเราอาจจะเน้นในเรื่องของปริมาณแต่ในครั้งนี้ในการคิดใหม่ก็อาจจะต้องเป็นการท่องเที่ยวที่มีจำนวนไม่มากก็คือเป็นกลุ่มเล็กค่ะนะคะซึ่งสามารถทำให้เราบริหารจัดการทรัพยากรได้อย่างสมดุลค่ะฉะนั้นในเรื่องของการท่องเที่ยวเราก็ยังคิดในเรื่องของมาตรฐานในเรื่องของความสะอาดปลอดภัยแล้วก็ถูกสุขลักษณะแล้วก็ในเรื่องที่ต้องให้ความสำคัญให้เกิดความมั่นใจว่าทุกคนมาในภูเก็ตแล้วก็จะต้องปลอดภัยกับไทยแล้วก็มีความสุขค่ะ
The mayor has shared that unlike the natural disaster of tsunami in 2004, the COVID-19 has taught Phuket many lessons. To worsen the situation, at this moment we still don't know when this pandemic crisis would end or when there is a vaccination for it. So we need to find ways to survive economically, physically, and emotionally. Before the crisis, the island was packed with tourists, and when it was locked down, people faced many financial problems and needed great help. However, there is a bright side of this crisis. This year, dry season is the first time in many years that we had enough water for everybody in the island. Our beaches are cleaner, amount of garbage was reduced substantially. The pandemic gave us time to rethink and reconsider the way we live and the way our tourism industry was like before the crisis. It makes us realize that we have to take the issue of carrying capacity much more seriously. We have to seek for high quality and high yield tourist market who spend more, consume less, and help us to reduce the cost of waste management. The number is no longer the most important. We are looking for a small group of tourists who are willing to share and spend more and save the environment. We will also try to encourage our businesses in hospitality and tourism to follow the new standard operating procedure to ensure high level of hygiene and safety and deliver better Phuket experience for tourists. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these interesting remarks. Madame Salero, s'il vous plaît.
Mrs. Salero. This new normal after the COVID-19, well, it's first of all a matter of safety, positive thinking. We need to promote tourism and sustainable tourism, actually. And with a new normal, cities should be, first of all, the place where inhabitants live, and then for tourists, as a second point. Thank you. Thank you very much.
The floor to Mrs. Betty Adero-Radier from Kenya for her remarks.
All right, thank you very much. Basically, what COVID has done is simply just killed what was the third largest GDP generator for our country, which is tourism, after agriculture and manufacturing. So some of the things that we need to put in place in terms of post-COVID consideration include a number of things. One of the things is looking at repackaging the products that we have to be able to appeal, first of all, much more to the domestic market that we'll be looking at. But for a long time, the tourism in our industry has survived on beach and safari products. And the country, on the contrary, has an amazing amount of diverse products that can be consumed in the area of birding, the area of culture, heritage, gastronomy, art, food. Gastronomy, food, arts, culture, adventure, and other hiking safaris, things like walking safaris, and these have not been exploited. So the period during this time has allowed for us to consider the diversity of markets and products, especially in the area that we have a really strong presence in, which is conservation and our reserves. And to be able to focus a bit more on other things that the city can offer, such as short breaks, such as staycations for people that live in and around the city. I think there's an opportunity for us to intentionally drive infrastructure to be able to allow people to get into places that they would ordinarily not be able to visit. We have community development programs that have benefited from tourism that people within the destination do not know about. There's an opportunity for the community skill around art and craft that can be developed that would be able to impact the economy and provide some economic support in the immediate term to the very small and medium-sized people that are involved in both the forward and backward integration in tourism. There's also an opportunity for us to be able to look to develop different areas such as packages with our trade, our tourism partners, as well as our airline partners and our other travel partners, including trains and transportation that will allow access into areas that people haven't considered in tourism over the period before COVID. Sightseeing trips are not formally developed, but of course there's an encouragement because we are a devolved country and 47 counties. And therefore, each county has got a tourism product that they push and they develop as top experiences within each of those counties. Those can be marketed and we support them in that venture so that people from the various counties can begin to consume tourism in that respect and therefore be able to begin to revive the economy that tourism is able to provide. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's move from the adventures in Kenya back to Macau.
Well, thank you. I think in our context, and I think probably this experience might be shared among my colleagues as well. We believe that first to recover in the new, what we call the new normal, or probably for a lot of people now, traveling long haul would not be their first choice. So mostly we would see that the first to recover, or probably for a long period of time, we would still need to rely on the immediate vicinity, places that are, just around us, where we feel that they are, we are more at ease in terms of their control in terms of COVID-19, which we can, start from there. And secondly, we would see that, now, which is also something which is already happening in terms of the sentiments of the local population, is that we can only reopen tourism or the local population would only welcome a reopen of tourism if we are able to guarantee a very, very good control. So this kind of control in terms of the tourism sector, we would need to work not only just within our sector, but definitely together with the health authorities locally as well as, around us. So I guess, I would agree with what our colleague from Barcelos has just said. We need to look at what the population feels, whilst we would like to reopen economic activities, particularly in terms of tourism, where we have people crossing borders. So this is the new kind of situation we have to work with, and definitely I think technology would help solve a lot of these kinds of issues. We're now having developed what we call health codes that we can exchange with our cross-border neighbors, and this can give some kind of ease to our local population, because they feel that with these kinds of health indicators, people who come in are free of COVID-19. So I guess that's what I would like to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And let's move to Georgetown for some final comments, please.
Yep. Thank you. 3 points for me. Number one is I think from now onwards, no one will take tourism for granted. I will really appreciate the next time I can fly out and stay in a hotel. We start to appreciate small things that we take it for granted before this. And I believe that people will still travel, they will appreciate to go to a new place or a place that they appreciate with the historical background or heritage. And the second trend that we are going to see is that people will spend more time to do online research before they arrive in that particular place, because they will be more selective. So with this, online digital promotions, we have to enhance our capacity on that market itself, because that will be the main trend and main resources that a lot of potential visitors will refer to, and they will compare. And of course, the last thing which a lot of my colleagues have shared is like, we have to follow the new SOP, wearing a mask, washing your hand, distancing each other. But I would like to highlight that, although we are physically distancing from each other, it doesn't mean that we cannot be socially engaged. I think that is the power of tourism, and we should continue doing, the connection between the visitor and the local people. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really think this was fascinating, because it came together that you all want to work with local communities, and that we appreciate also small things, not only the big tourism coming back, but really we start with a new normal, which you just described. I also would like to thank all the panelists for sharing their experiences and their valuable time with us. I would like to thank the audience for your attention and for the questions also submitted. So thank you very much. I think this debate really demonstrated the importance of coming together and share these experiences as we face the ongoing crisis, and share also from one region of the world to the other. I would like to invite our audience to please get out and support your local heritage sites and your creative industries. And I think we must all work together to ensure that tourism can be a platform for recovery globally. Now, with this, I would like to give the floor back to Denise for the closing words of our Assistant Director General, Mr. Ottone. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you again, once to everyone for your participation in this special session. Now I am pleased to invite Mr. Ernesto Ottone, Assistant Director General for Culture, to deliver the concluding remarks. Mr. Ottone, the floor is yours.
Merci, Denise. Thank you very much.
Denise.
It has been a very intense dialogue that you had. And well, first of all, I will not say what everybody knows. Over the past months, we have heard a lot about COVID-19. And as the virus, and you say it continues to spread, I'm sure that this will remain an important topic in the next month. I hope only in the next month. And it will be important not only to act and recover, but also to reflect and contribute to a sustainable future. UNESCO organized this meeting with various objectives. These were to look at how cities had been at the forefront of addressing the pandemic, but also to share and learn experiences from across different regions of the world. Cities are where most people live. They are where most people work and go to school. They are particularly diverse, and they also are confronted with major imbalance and inequalities. For UNESCO, cities are places where many different dimensions of our work come together. And it is in this multi-sectorial approach that lies UNESCO's main assets and actions, because this allows to approach cities not as places, but also as platforms where all dimensions of human activities intersect. Today, we have heard from major architects, planners, academics, and experts from a broad range of sectors and from all over the world. We had from Wuhan in China to Santos in Brazil, from Phuket in Thailand to Barcelos in Portugal. And they have all shared their experiences about what has been done in cities worldwide in response to COVID-19 pandemic, and also what is being planned for the future. That's a lot of food for thought can be taken from this online meeting and be used as inspiration for our future programming. At this stage, I would like to highlight a few points as a way of concluding this meeting. We started this discussion with looking at how cities were truly at the forefront during this pandemic. Cities were or are implementing numerous restrictions while devising ways to make the lockdown and the pandemic manageable for people, communities, and services. And while the situation remains difficult in many places, cities have been learning a lot from dealing with this situation. Clearly, education, culture, science are key for the success and sustainability of its local recovery strategies. We had relied on culture as a resource to deal with the crisis, and now culture and cultural professionals need the strong support of decision makers at local and national levels. We had relied on education to facilitate inclusive learning opportunities for all during the crisis. And now education leaders, decision makers at local, but also at national level, need collectively reassess learning system to ensure what people learn is truly relevant to their lives and to the survival of the planet. The COVID-19 pandemic has augmented structural inequalities and discrimination that vulnerable population are confronted with. The word that you use a lot, that I'm not really agree and confident about the new normality or the new normal, requires a rethinking of governance approaches that will underline an intersectorial whole of community approach in order to ensure that inclusive social policy are developed and implemented. The role of water security in protecting citizens and in monitoring COVID-19 is clear and evident. Water-sensitive urban design can help face similar pandemics and provide a foundation for sustainable development. Cultural and linguistic diversity as central development framework to foster media and information literate societies for human solidarity in building sustainable cities. We will continue to leverage our city networks to make sure that you can continue sharing experiences so that those who are in full swing of the pandemic today can benefit from others' lessons over the past months. In the immediate aftermath of the pandemic, Cities, once again, are leading and will lead the way, working across sectors and being agile. We all agree that it is not an easy time. It gives hope to see life slowly going back to normal in some part of the world, but it also comes with restrictions and new way of utilizing public spaces, transport, businesses, ensuring education, or also visiting any cultural institution. For the long-term recovery, we have glimpsed into the future. The cities of tomorrow will be cities that are more sustainable, that are more livable. They will also be cities that are more inclusive and have devised ways to better live together. Not only have we heard our colleagues from World Bank or from the OECD on how this experience can make cities more resilient, but also from experts, architects, urban planners, on how this idea can be turned into concrete design in using space differently, reconceiving the relation between people, the human part, and the place, and those into rethinking on how cities function. When talking about UNESCO cities networks, that are the platforms, there is also this very tangible way of connecting cities and citizens around the world, and it is through tourism. The special session on transformative city tourism acknowledge how cities are working to restart tourism while putting culture and creativity at the heart of their recovery efforts. As you said, with millions of jobs and livelihoods at stake, it is key that we support resilient, robust communities and build back tourism to balance the need and interest of both residents and visitors. Let's reshape urban tourism into a more sustainable sector. The COVID-19 pandemic has revealed and amplified all major global challenges of our time. Cities being at the front line in our response to the crisis fully highlights once again the ultimate importance of the local dimension in all development issues and paths. UNESCO is thus more committed than ever to engaging with cities worldwide, alongside its member states, stakeholders, and partners, to renew and also upscale the international momentum for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in the post-COVID-19 era. Pour finir, je souhaite profiter de cette occasion pour vous remercier à tous.
In conclusion, I'd like to seize this opportunity to thank you all, our moderators, the speakers, the whole team that worked very hard, headed by Denise. And I hope that these discussions are a source of inspiration. And I hope that they'll help us to be better prepared to develop more sustainable and more inclusive solutions to live together in cities and beyond cities, going back to this normal life before COVID-19 is no longer an option. We need to seize this moment and to focus on new opportunities that were created by this crisis in order to transform cities into resilient, inclusive, and green communities. Thank you very much for your being here with us. UNESCO is very proud to be here with you and to have such a diverse panel with topics that are at the heart of our mandate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ottone, for your remarks. It is time to close our meeting. I would like to thank the moderators, speakers, as well as those who followed the meeting through YouTube for their interest and support. I would also like to inform you that the video of this meeting will soon be uploaded on the dedicated UNESCO webpage, together with a detailed report of this event, which will further highlight the importance of the local dimension in particular cities for building our common sustainable future. Merci beaucoup à tous.
The recording has stopped.